Be on the agenda tonight, so if we can get some quiet in here, you can certainly stay back there looking. That's just fine. Get up and mill around. That's fine. Just please keep it down because we do have a business meeting to hold. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Danuski?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness?
Here.
Councilmember Herbig?
Here.
Councilmember Sperry?
Here.
Councilmember Curtis?
Present.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Thank you.
So I guess I got to take advantage of this one more time since I really don't get it very often to be able to do this. So I'm going to do it again. Mrs. Baker, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think that's the only time I can get away with giving an order. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, the agenda will stand approved as written. Seeing as my computer is not booting up here yet. Isn't technology wonderful? Oh, sorry. Next item on the agenda then is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for you to talk about issues that are important to you and the community, and we ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The clerk, please call the first person.
Kent Sturgis?
Good evening. I'm Kent Sturgis. I live at 18821 64th Avenue Northeast in Kenmore. I didn't notice that the park improvement concepts are in the business area of the agenda, and so I'm kind of jumping in here, maybe prematurely, but this is my opportunity to speak for a couple of minutes on what I'm seeing here. I'm really pleased to see the city being more proactive in developing their park plan and looking at some pretty exciting ideas. There's some very exciting ideas back there. However, as far as Log Boom Park is concerned, I really like the beach and I like the access for hand-powered boats, but I thought that overall the plan there lacked ambition. And I understand that there is a lot to be done and there's limited funds, but still, I was disappointed that there were no plans or even discussion as to the future of the dock. Some rehabilitation there would create more uses, and I just hope that won't fall off your radar. Also, of course, there's no parking indicated on the plan, and I'm not sure. I know that parking is an issue, and I'm sure you probably are talking a lot about it. But gosh, you get a sunny day and you got a beach down there, you're gonna have a hard time accommodating people that want to come in. I thought the Squire's Landing ideas were very nice. Probably maybe less is better there because of the natural setting and so forth. And also I wanted to get in a plug for something that's come up before. This is not a new idea. It seems to kind of be bubbling in the background. And that's, I hope that the city will consider not only physical access to the water, but also visual access. And I think it's important for the city to really take a look at acquiring the property on the lake side of 522 in the area of Ostrom's and the tire place. If you could get hold of that property and create a nice park up there, I think it would be just a major asset to the community and be something that would be appreciated for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sherry Baker?
Sherry Baker, 7416 Northeast 169th Street in Kenmore. And I just want to thank you for providing Squires Landing Park for those of us who, for myself, have just kind of discovered being on the water. And the possibility of having the improvements and making it more accessible is really, really exciting. So I just hope you will continue on growing that for us to use. And thank you.
Greg Woogard.
My name is Greg Woodyard, 18613 67th Place Northeast, Kenmore. I wasn't expected to give a speech today, but I am the president of North Lake Little League here in Kenmore. I represent 14 board members and 400 families here in Kenmore. And I wanted to talk about the possibility of the baseball fields over in St. Edward's Park. Again, I forgot all my notes. I didn't bring anything. But right now, we're spending about 50% of our yearly budget, excess of $50,000 a year, to borrow somebody else's, rent somebody else's fields. And I think that everybody should know that in Kenmore there's no land left. There is nothing to go after, no, dreams or anything of that. So St. Edward's Park is our last chance of putting those 400 families from Kenmore into Kenmore Parks. Instead of having to drive to Bothell, Woodinville, North Seattle, and all of the other places that the softball teams go, which all do interleague, they go into the city to play their baseball fields and softball. Also, those fields, from my understanding, could be used as multi-recreational. They could be used for cricket and soccer also. So again, I'll be back on the January meeting and bringing more facts and figures. That's all I got. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
William.
I want to remind people this is the opportunity to speak on parks because that is on our agenda tonight, and this is the time to do it if you want to have any voice any comments. Yes.
William Leiter.
Good evening. I'm William Leiter. I'm a board member of the Snow King Watershed Council. I live at 2526 205th Place Southwest in Linwood. I'm here tonight again as a representative of the Snow King Watershed Council to request the City of Kenmore support in our ongoing appeals at the Payne Field projects that directly impacts the city. Kenmore has spent over $100,000 annually to remove sediment and debris from Swamp Creek resulting from stormwater excessive flows originating in Snohomish County. Last June, the Snow King Watershed Council appealed a Payne Field project that proposes to turn a Swamp Creek headwaters wetland into a detention pond under the guise of a wetland enhancement project. Headwater wetlands are not only critical habitat for flood control, but provide a slow release of stormwater during summer months. The airport wants to use the wetland to save money rather than constructing a detention facility on their own property. During our appeal, we observed and discovered that the Payne Field Airport had illicitly expanded a parking lot into the wetland buffer in violation of a stay that was in effect for the area that was prohibited under construction while it was under appeal. Upon further investigation, we discovered that a 5-acre parking lot that was right next to it was also constructed without any permits, without any flow control, and without any stormwater detention. Based on our complaint that we filed on November 4th to the Planning and Development Services, they issued a warning notice to the airport of a code violation. The airport has proposed to continue the use of the operation and has not met the conditions of the warning notice, which they were supposed to have met on December 7th. Our appeal forced the airport to withdraw its determination of non-significance in its decision. However, the airport now intends to simply reissue the DNS requiring the Snow King Watershed Council to potentially pay another $500 to file a whole separate appeal. To support our appeal, the Snow King Watershed Council has incurred attorney's fees and will continue to incur other costs, including hiring wetland experts to support our appeal, both before the hearing examiner and the Pollution Control Hearings Board. The Snow King Watershed Council has already spent over $2,000 on attorney's fees and filing fees fighting this project, not to mention hundreds of hours of volunteer time. On December 2nd, we requested a $3,000 grant from the city to help defray our legal and expert costs. Public Works is supportive of this request. We feel that the city will greatly benefit from the the appeal that we have filed with Snohomish County. In short, the grant request will be money well spent with actual tangible value to the city. If Snohomish County is unwilling to follow its own codes and is allowed to get away with this, what does that say for development in the rest of the community? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whiter.
Jean Kalhoff.
Good evening. I'm Jean Kalloff. I live at 6026 Northeast 202nd Street here in Kenmore. And I just wanted to register my excitement that you have provided Squires Landing for us. It's wonderful to have a dedicated space for hand-powered boaters, something that's separate from power boating folks. It's a lovely space as it is, and these options that you've outlined tonight are nice to see. I think the access road that we use currently has the potential to create some problems as far as congestion, and so for that reason, I prefer the option that doesn't use that, and I think that's option A. So thank you again. It's a great space, and I look forward to what it will turn out to be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalhoff.
Pat Smith.
My name is Patrick Smith. I, too, live at 6026 Northeast 202nd Street here in Kenmore. And I would also like to say thank you for Squires Landing. We have been longtime kayakers in the community. We have launched at 68th at the boat launch there, and that is often in conflict with the motorized people. And so we very much appreciate having Squires Landing being acquired by the city. It is a wonderful facility, and whatever development there is will be appreciated. Additionally, I'd like to say we are regular bicycle commuters in the city, and the improvements that have been made in transportation for walking and for bicycling safety have been very helpful. And, you know, we have more to do there, and there are things that can be done, but I have noticed a help on making 61st much less of a racetrack on everybody trying to get north in the evening than in the morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mickey Gundersall.
Good evening. I'm Mickey Gunderson. I live at 1126 Lawton Road, Aldwood Manor. Also, it's called Linwood. I grew up in Woodinville. I graduated from Bothell High School. I lived in Kenmore from 1961 to 62. I had my first child there. I lived in that little trailer court back there. And then I moved to where I live now, and I am about 800 feet as a crow flies above Swamp Creek, above Locust Way. So I really do have an interest in Swamp Creek. And in 1998, when Snohomish County, I live in Snohomish County, I want all your residents to understand this. I organized my community so that we could participate in the public review process of the development was going on. And we had a very difficult time making any changes, although we made a lot of changes. We spent 5 years in court at the cost of $50,000, and our biggest goal was to protect Swamp Creek, because Swamp Creek starts in Everett and it runs down through Snohomish County, and then it goes into Kenmore here in King County, and that's why we're the Snow King Watershed Council, because one of the problems with governments is, you know, Snohomish County has a buffer on the creek, and then Briar has a different buffer, and I don't know what you have here. And, you know, we're all affecting each other, but you guys get all the runoff. So what Bill Leiter was asking for, this grant to help us fight this. And this is really important to Kenmore, because if Snohomish County doesn't stop allowing the developers and even their own entity, which is the Painfield Airport, which is the executive puts a person in place that runs that, they have been violating their own codes. The developers that Snohomish County Planning and Development Service allows all kinds of people to violate the codes. They look the other way. I've been doing this now for 17 years. I hope that's enough to convince you that I really would rather be doing something else. I'm a retired master teacher, and I would like to do something else. I'm 74 years old, and seems like I shouldn't have to spend so much time doing this. And so, but it's necessary, and it's important to advocate for the environment, and especially you guys know, because you're spending $100,000 a year because of what's happening in Snohomish County. If Snohomish County would do their correct building, you wouldn't even have to have a surface water management. We didn't used to have that. So I hope you guys will understand what we're doing here. And Bill Leiter is giving all of his time. He's an engineer. He normally charges for this kind of work. He's donating all of his time. This is so important. I've donated $1,000 of my own money. And I just hope that you guys will support us. The Snow King Watershed Council also, for you and for all the other people here, I want you to know that we are doing a restoration project at Squires Landing. We have is that our $72,000 grant, Bill? And so you guys will start noticing that we're removing all of the invasive plants out there, and we're going to replant that area. And so we're supporting you on Squires Landing. So we really do care about Kenmore, and we really do care about Swamp Creek. And I've never had an opportunity in all these 17 years that I've been doing this to have such an impact. If we can get Snohomish County, I mean, this wetland that they want to use a detention vault, this needs to be a detention vault that they need to build. They're going to dump all that water in a wetland. It's not going to be cleaned. It's going to overflow into the streets of Everett. It's a horrible thing. And so we need to work together, and I hope you'll support this, to get Snohomish County to say, okay, people are noticing we have to stop doing this. We have a new executive there. He's a biologist, a fish biologist. I'm hoping that things will change, and I'm hoping that we can work together and bring Swamp Creek back to be a really wonderful, strong fish-bearing creek and not flood you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gunderson.
Marilyn Knutson.
Marilyn Knutson. I'm a resident of Kenmore. I live at 18421 80th Avenue Northeast. Part of my property has Little Swamp Creek running through it. And as that 92-acre wetland migrates, I get some of Swamp Creek, I think, down that corridor. I sit on the Snow King Watershed Council. I am supportive of asking you for grant money so that we can get Snohomish County not to be flooding downstream. We all live downstream somewhere. And I've lived in Kenmore for 50 years. I have watched the waterways change. I've watched them go high, I've watched them go low. I'd love to be a resource for you guys if you have questions. I have pictures over the years. I've fought very hard in my own way to try to preserve the habitat that is there. So I guess that's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Knutson.
Elizabeth Mooney.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Mooney. I live at 5934 Northeast 201st Street, Kenmore. And I just want to say I'm really happy that the Snow King Watershed Council's efforts are being expressed here to help us protect Swamp Creek and the park. And I also want to thank all of you for the kayaking and dragon boat opportunity and all the community members that are benefiting from those clubs. I've just begun to learn about that and am thrilled that that's part of our Kenmore Park now, and look forward to exploring it more with friends and family. I want to thank the council for providing the opportunity tonight to hear some of the design concepts for the development of our parks in Kenmore. As a citizen of Kenmore, I am very concerned that we might lose some of our irreplaceable natural areas to provide facilities of marginal benefit to the public, or even worse, that some developments may create a health hazard for my fellow citizens, in particular small children that might not know everything about what's in our lake and sediments. I know that we and you have been trying to get Department of Ecology to help us, and I want to still help work with the city in those efforts to get Department of Ecology to do what would be helpful for our community and our public health and our endangered species and our enjoyment of the water and the shoreline. I encourage the council to consider the consequences of all future development very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooney.
Doug Ritchie.
Good evening. My name is Doug Ritchie. I'm the interim coach for the Kenmore Waterfront Activities Center canoe and kayak team. And I want to thank you all for the work you're doing to develop both the Squires Landing Park and Log Boom. My particular interest, as I think a lot of folks know, is to help develop paddling opportunities for young people in the Kenmore area. And I really appreciate the time and effort and foresight that the council has put out in the development projects that you are working on. Recently, I was helping a friend of mine coach his canoe and kayak team, which is part of the Archbishop Murphy High School team, just a few miles north of here, and we were using the YMCA pool in Monroe. And as we were winding down the class there, I got talking about the paddling programs we offer and the Dragon Boat team that I know people have mentioned and seen before, and the other canoe and kayak programs we have. And I said, if you ever want to do any more paddling, you should get involved in this. And I said, where do you live anyway? And he looked at me and he said, do you know where Kenmore is? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do know where Kenmore is. It's rapidly becoming the paddling center of the Pacific Northwest. And it's because of the efforts of people like you and other community members who are involved in donating equipment and donating their time and making this all possible for the residents of Kenmore that we're able to really continue to develop what programs we're seeing. We had great success last year. In fact, I brought some of our young athletes with me, but we're still working on a lot of the self-confidence that people gain from competitive sports. So next year, they'll come up here and support me a little bit more. But thank you again for all the work you're doing. I know we can make a project that helps improve the local environment and makes the access for the general public much greater than it has been for waterfront activities, much greater than what we've had in the past. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie.
There's no.
And we do see you back there, and we're glad that you're here, and that's fine. I understand not wanting to, so don't worry about it.
There's no one else signed up.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to be heard? Anybody else wishing to be heard before we close citizen comments? Thank you all very much. Mr. Ryder, Ms. Gunderson, and Ms. Knutson, thank you very much for your comments. I know this council has been very concerned with sediment and runoff that's been happening from Snohomish County for many years, certainly the 12 years that I've been on the council, and I know that the council before us was also very concerned, and we've been working hard and trying to get cooperation between the jurisdictions, and we will continue to do so. We definitely appreciate your efforts, and thank you very much. Parks coming up later on the agenda, so stick around. We'll all be enlightened further. Next item on the agenda then is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This consent agenda stands approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing to amend the Kenmore Municipal Code, Section 12.50, to adopt City of Kenmore 2016 road standards. Ms. Overlease, Public Works Director, City Engineer, and Zach Richardson, Capital Projects Manager.
Good evening, council members. So today is just the public hearing portion of the road standards. We are not actually asking for any decisions to be made today. We're still waiting to gather all of the feedback from the other reviews we're going through, as well as any feedback that you guys have through the end of this year, so that we can get those incorporated in early January. So before I open it up just to the public comment, though, I did want to address the one outstanding issue that we had discussed at the previous meeting about the road standards, and that was the design speed of 35 miles an hour on collector roads. And those are the residential roadways that are providing access to 50 or more lots. So the traffic engineer and I kind of dug into this, and 10 miles over the posted speed limit is definitely, it's an industry standard for, it's essentially a factor of safety for vehicles. Mm-hmm. There is starting to be a little bit more movement to move away from that. So, and as far as the number of new roads that we're going to have go in that are going to supply over 50 lots, it's very few. In fact, potentially Lake Point can be the only one I can actually think of off the top of my head. That may not be a full list, but so what we're kind of proposing is to leave it in there as a 35 mile an hour maximum, but with another new footnote that would say per the traffic engineer's direction. So if we can leave it in there as kind of a general guidance, it allows people to have some stability to design to if they're doing preliminary plans. Generally, the higher speed limits are going to take more, larger radiuses, more land, so that allows them to prepare for the worst case scenario. And if we look at it and decide that it's really a road that's going to be controlled more by pedestrians, we can actually change that still. So that'll be a case by case basis. Again, we're only expecting this to come up 1 or 2 times throughout the next couple of years. So that was where we got with that at the moment. Any questions?
So as a reminder, the public hearing is this evening, and we had asked council last time we came to talk about road standards that by the end of this month, if you had any additional comments or things you didn't think we captured correctly as part of our policy conversations, that you let us know. Right now, the document is out for the Department of Commerce review and under SEPA, I believe. So we are working through those processes. So we still have time to have conversations and to make tweaks, but our hope is that kind of January, February timeframe that we come back for adoption of the road standards.
Any questions? Thank you. I think we're set. If we have questions, we'll make sure that we get to you before you bring it back to us. So thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry, are we going to, this is on the agenda twice. Are we going to have a chance to talk about this later? Or were we just going to discuss it here with staff before the public hearing?
So there's an agenda item.
Right, there's an agenda. We'll have the public hearing. If we can discuss it now, we can discuss it after the hearing.
Okay, I'll wait till after the hearing.
You want to wait till after the hearing? Okay, fine. So we'll declare the public hearing open on amending the Kenmore Municipal Code, Section 12.50, to adopt the City of Kenmore 2016 road standards. Anybody wishing to be heard?
There's no one signed up.
Anybody wishing to be heard on the road standards for 2016 and to amend Section 1250 of the City Code? One last time. Anybody wishing to be heard on amending the Kenmore Municipal Code, Section 12.50, to adopt the City of Kenmore 2016 road standards? Nobody's wishing to be heard. I declare the public hearing closed. So we have discussion, questions. Councilmember Herbig.
As you can probably imagine, I'm still a little uncomfortable with us designing roads to go for people to drive 10 miles an hour or faster than the speed limit we're going to be setting on them. I just think it sets us up for people to be speeding. If you design a road for 50, people will do 50. You design it for 35, people will drive 35, even if we have it signed for 25. So I'm just not comfortable, frankly, with us putting this in there, even if it's contingent on a traffic engineer to come back and approve each individual road, and even if we may only be adding one or two of these in the future. Who knows where we'll be in 20 years, and we may not have redone this in the meantime, and we may have a different traffic engineer, we may have a different governing philosophy of the city. And I would hate for us to default to allowing roads to be built that frankly encourage people to go 30-35% over the speed limit. I'd like to ask my colleagues what their thoughts are on this before we move forward on it, because if I'm in the minority, that's fine, we can move forward, but I want to get a sense of what my colleagues are thinking on that.
Councilmember Smith.
Well, I agree with Councilmember Herbig, and one of the reasons is because if we're talking about the Lake Point site being the only potential development site that this would be enacted, that's right across or directly west of where Plywood Supply is, where we have 35, and I know we're talking about already decreasing that to 30. And so it seems somewhat contradictory just in the fact that we've already got a 35, we want to, or are talking about decreasing the speed. Why would we even consider 35 then over at a more congested area?
Do you want to, or?
No, I think there might be worth clarifying. So when the question was asked when we were here last time, actually Brett and Zach did a lot of research. And I think we landed where we did is because we usually try to be kind of where other folks are as far as liability and standards. And we found with Zach's recommendation, we're consistent with what other folks are doing. There was just I think folks have been doing it for so long, and that's the way engineers have been designing. We just couldn't find any documentation that talked about dropping it. When we talk about, I think remembering too, maybe Zach can remind us, when we talk about what we're designing for, we're talking about vertical curves, curves up and down, curves sideways, sight distance. And so we're not talking about lane width. There's different things that impact pedestrian safety. I am not opposed to, when you're designing curve radii, designing for a slightly higher speed, because you can have narrower lanes that keep cars going slow. So I think we have the tools in our toolbox to manage traffic and have the pedestrian and bicycle safety attributes that we want. I feel like we're kind of out on a limb if I say, the industry designs a roadway for curves and sight distance and geometry for 35 when we know we have the tools to make lanes narrower, to improve crossings, to have fewer lanes, to have bike lanes. If council would like to direct us to drop our design standards for a 25-mile-an-hour road, I will do it, but it's not my recommendation at this time because I don't have any data to back me up that other people are going there.
Councilmember Curtis.
So I totally agree with the idea of designing anything you design with a little more capacity. So if you had a bridge that's good for 50,000 pounds, you wouldn't want to stop there. You'd want to build safety ends for 70,000 pounds or whatever. And I kind of see it as that. It's sort of a safety thing. Could we say that we don't want a 35-mile-per-hour road? We only want a 30-mile-per-hour road. Then if you give the 10-mile-per-hour safety, you're only up to 40. I mean, can you lower the miles per hour? Then your 10 miles per hour still isn't that big of a deal.
Well, I think that's the way the standards are set up, that we have the lower speed limit, but it's designed geometrically for a higher speed availability. And I really completely understand where Councilmember Herbig, it's the desire to control speed and have people driving on the road, the speed limit that the road is set at. I get that. But what plays into speed it's the geometrics, it's the striping, it's the signage, it's that whole toolbox. It's about the number of access points for cars, how close pedestrians are. So when you set a speed on a road, it's a whole cookbook, it's a whole page long of stuff. You've seen that. So I truly am not opposed to what you're thinking, but as an engineer, I'm also not comfortable saying, we don't want to have that geometric wiggle room anymore.
I just want to kind of add to what Chris was saying is the straightaways are going to be, people will drive on the straightaways regardless of what the design speed is, that they're going to treat those the same. Where this comes into play is in the curve radiuses and the sight distance issues. So there's actually some argument that the larger design speed maintains better sight distance. So if the vehicle is actually traveling at the posted speed limit, you actually have a safer pedestrian facility because he can see the car sooner and the car can see him sooner. Now, there is still the issue of if the car's speeding, then he can technically drive the road a little bit faster and not be uncomfortable. But if you get compliance with the speed limit, it actually is safer to over-design these for both the pedestrians and the vehicles.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm having a little bit of difficulty in that the highways traditionally have been built for cars. Roads have been designed for cars to get through as fast and as safely as they can. We're seeing more and more pedestrians, more and more bicyclists. And you've mentioned pedestrians a couple of times, but mostly vehicles. and I'm wondering if the highway or the road design industry has really taken to the pedestrians and bicyclists and really considered them as much as maybe some of us here on the council are thinking about them. And whether maybe they're still thinking about, well, I know WashDOT, their goal is to get people through Kenmore as fast as they can so they can get from wherever to Seattle. It's a throughput that they're concerned with. The traffic, the lights, timing, and all that is based on vehicles getting through. And we're not necessarily talking about major state highways, but access roads and so on. And yes, there are going to be a lot more pedestrians along these roads and cyclists as well than there were when the science of highway design, road design, was first done. So I'm wondering if road design has caught up to society and how society moves people.
Road design, yes, but unfortunately the speed design stuff all puts me back to the highway manuals, like you pointed out. So while I think road design and there are pedestrian facilities that have caught up to that, the speed limit issue still seems to be under the somewhat archaic
and we had
highway
people
manual.
from State DOT, WashDOT, tell us one time several years ago that the speed limit is set on the basis of how fast a car can drive on the road. So if everybody's driving 50 miles an hour, then you'll set the speed limit maybe at 40, 45. But if everybody's driving 70 miles an hour, then I don't know why you'd make this a 60-mile-an-hour stretch here. But sometimes the thinking seems to be backwards to me.
The posted speed can never exceed the design speed. You'd be creating an unsafe condition in that scenario. There is room for the posted speed to be lower than the design speed, though.
But like 522, if nobody's on the road, it's a straight road, you could go 90 miles an hour on that. Not safely with all the other cars there. So, I don't know. We need to think about getting back to the pedestrians and whether it's safe for them. And I think the motivation for some of us lowering the speeds within Kenmore, hey, if I can go 30 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour and get from here to Bothell, that's fine. If it takes me 2 minutes longer, it doesn't bother me. And what it's going to bother are those people coming from Snohomish County that want to get through Kenmore as fast as they can and get to work. And I don't know that we want to sacrifice the safety of our citizens just so the people that want to go fast can.
That kind of gets back to this is a very specific road type as well. So again, it's 50 plus lots, but it's not including the arterials. The arterials were separate from this road type. So any of the roads that would be cut through roads, 61st, Juanita, those are all arterials that really wouldn't, this standard isn't going to cover so much.
Councilmember Herbig.
So, sorry, the argument that we shouldn't do this because nobody else is doing it kind of rings a little hollow with me, and that's, we went and we took kind of the extraordinary step before a lot of other cities like Bellevue even, with passing our target 0. We're kind of going above and beyond what a lot of other cities are doing with emphasis for pedestrian and bicycle safety. And I worry, when we were talking last year about lowering the speeds on Juanita, the argument given to us by the traffic engineer was, well, the 85th percentile is X. If we lower it, people are still going to speed because that's what the road's designed for. And I worry that we may look at this and, maybe we get a really vibrant downtown over at Lake Point, and we decide, hey, we want to take it down to 20 because there's a lot of traffic going on there. And then, the traffic engineer comes back and goes, well, the 85th percentile is, 28 and a half. So if we do that, people are still going to be speeding, and that argument would be used against lowering the speed because we've designed it for 35. I don't know. I think we should be taking steps that other cities aren't, and we should be prioritizing, especially if one of the roads we're talking about is Lake Point Boulevard, possibly. We should be prioritizing our non-motorized folks. And we should be, in those places where we want people to be going slower, we should be making the cars slightly uncomfortable so that they are slowing down, so they are having to take a corner slowly instead of just zipping around a corner. Because that's an accident that we had just last year, was over on 73rd and 522, where a car just went around the corner and got somebody in the crosswalk. Whereas if the corner was more of a 90-degree angle and they had to go and turn, they would have been going slower by the point they got to the crosswalk. So I think we can do better than this, and thank you.
I guess I'm a little concerned in that I want the sight distance. I think that's very important because I live on a street where I've got no sight distance. And every morning pulling out onto the road and more or less taking your life in your hands because you can't see cars coming around a corner. So I find that very frustrating, and I like the idea of having a longer sight distance. But I also understand that if you make that a nice, wide, straight road, it's not, 175th is a good example. The speed limit may be 30, but I don't know many people who drive that on that road. So I see Councilmember Herbig's point, and I'm not an engineer, so I don't really know how to do this. I just know that I want the sight distances. I want the safety standards that designing for a higher speed gives you, and I guess I don't know enough about the other methods it is to reduce the opportunities to go above a set speed. So I understand the point, and but I certainly like designing for the safety aspect.
Yeah, we didn't spend a month going standard by standard, and I'm on the same page as you, and I don't mind doing things different. We could make this a full-time job for the next month, looking at all the design standards for a roadway and all the things that are involved. I think what Zach and I were trying to do is find a way to give ourselves a flexibility. We can go very restrictive and say on a 25-mile-an-hour road, all of the design standards have to be 25, and then anything that is different will be a variance. So we can go that route. I'm not in a position to tell you what the unintended consequences will be. I just don't know.
And that's what concerns me, the unintended consequences. If you design for 25 and you build for 25, how many people might get hit because a car didn't see them because they were speeding? Because you know that we're going to have people that don't obey. That's why they write traffic tickets. So
I feel like we understand what we're trying to achieve as a city, and we look at all of our projects based on the code, and giving ourselves the flexibility to require changes was where we were headed. Not being able to understand unintended consequences, to spend the time truly digging into all the design manuals, the national ones, the local ones. To do a pros and cons of changing all of those. We tried to say, hey, where are we compared to what other folks are doing? We're open to change. we certainly are completely fine if you would like to give us the guidance to change our, design to exactly match the speed of the road. I just can't tell you what that's going to do.
Right.
But I
And
do know
certainly
everything to design to a slightly higher speed then is a variation.
Well, I certainly appreciate the emphasis on
Deviation.
pedestrian safety and bicycle safety, because those of the older generation that are still riding bikes and have no business on bikes, we need to be protected. So thank you. Councilmember Smith.
I will defer to you being the experts, but I would just like to add, within the last couple of years, I think most of us up here read a book called Walkable Cities, and one of the concepts in that book was, in order to slow traffic down, is you make vehicle drivers uncomfortable, and there were many examples in there about how you can do that, and so I'm sure a lot of us up here, that's something that is in the back of our mind, thinking about how do you do that. And when you design it for a higher speed, then they are more comfortable, not less comfortable. And I think there's just a conflict. And one of the things they talk a lot about in that book is how engineering standards have not kept up with the change in lifestyle and how urban planning is going. And so I just hope that's something we can consider. But I, too, am not an engineer, and so I would defer you to make, help us make the right call here. I just want us to be able to consider that as we move forward and look at how we design these roads.
Councilmember Danuski.
So we've got, Chris and Brett and everybody who understands our goals and understands what we're trying to do with the lower speed limits and everything. And they are fairly strong at recommending that we stick with the 35 and use all our options to go under. They're mentioning safety and sight distance and all that. And once again, I don't think I'm an expert enough to go around that, as long as we all know that, whatever roads we're going to do for Lake Point, we'll be looking at those and making sure that they're safe.
Anything else? Thank you. Oh, Councilmember Sperry.
Last but not least, right, Mr. Mayor? Well, first of all, thank you. You've done a lot of work helping to, on all the standards, but particularly this one that came up, and, when it was brought up, I think there was, in terms of the road standards being designed for a certain speed, I think that there was a lot of confusion. Does that mean that we're saying people can go that fast and all that? So I do appreciate the work that you did to find out, what that's about. And it sounds like it's curve radius, sight distance. But I think you've heard that we are concerned about multimodal, and we want, the cars and the pedestrians and the bikes and whatever else of wheeled vehicle people are coming up with to work. So I am supportive of your recommendation and look forward to passing this. Thank you.
Anybody else? Member Herbig.
And I just want to say thank you for all your work on this. I know it was a tough slog. This is just the one sticking point I had, but great work. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
So, Your Honor, I'm hearing go with staff recommendation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. But please, you have until the end. We're trying to hold to the end of the month for any other significant comments, so we can work them in before we bring them back for adoption. So please send any other feedback you have to Zach. And Zach's awesome. He's really, really pushed through on this one. It has not been easy, nor fun. Maybe fun. Thank you.
Just know that we are concerned. All right, next item on the agenda then is Puget Sound Energy franchise discussion. Ms. Owsley.
I can get another way to do it. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you know, over the last several weeks, we have heard from a number of citizens and business owners about power reliability in Kenmore, particularly now that we're in storm season, which got started even earlier than usual with the August storm this year. As it happens, it is time for the city to negotiate a new franchise agreement with Puget Sound Energy. And this is a contract that grants the utility the right to make use of the public right-of-way for the purpose of furnishing utility services to members of the public. And based on what we have heard from you and from a number of people in the community, we wanted to come to you tonight and give you an idea of what are some of the issues that we intend to raise in these discussions with Puget Sound Energy. And obviously, we're right at the beginning of our discussions with them, so this is not a inclusive list. It doesn't but it does give you an idea of some of the things that we've certainly identified, and I'm interested in hearing from you tonight if there are additional issues that you'd like us to raise in our discussions. I think the two main things that you see in this bullet list that we've provided is system reliability. Particularly in some parts of our city, it takes longer to restore power than it does in other parts of the city, and we hear about that a lot. This is a city, as you'll hear a little bit later in the agenda, that has a lot of home-based businesses, and when they are without power, it affects their businesses. Obviously, it's a health and safety issue in some cases as well. So reliability is going to be a main thing. And then having the ability to have direct and regular communication between PSE and the city. So you're going to see some things that we would like regular reports on. So just quickly addressing the list in front of you, the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission requires regular reports from the utilities that it regulates on the frequency of power outages and the duration of those power outages. And so we would expect that PSE provides that information to us at the same time that they provide it to PSE or to the Utilities and Transportation Commission. And then if it's, we would also like to see how Kenmore's metrics with respect to frequency and duration of outages compares to other parts of their system. And we'd like to build in regular briefings to the council, not just when there is an issue that's come up, but just on an ongoing basis during the term of the franchise agreements. And then we heard in November of some projects that PSE is considering doing in Kenmore to address the system reliability, and so we're going to expect some information on those proposed projects and where they are in the funding pipeline. Circuit 26 in Northwest Kenmore is a particular area of concern. This is where it does take often longer to restore power in the city, and the utility has admitted, yes, there are some real challenges there because of the distribution line being difficult to access because it's not on a right-of-way, and so we're going to expect a detailed strategy on how they're going to improve reliability in this area. And even what their plan is to enforce easements that run along private property lines. And then some kind of standard items that you see in franchise agreements about vegetation control and what the tree trimming intervals are, as well as pole replacement schedule, and also kind of a standard feature in franchise agreements is how they deal with the right-of-way and restore pavement or other city facilities. We also, as you'll discuss a little bit later tonight, we have some really signature projects that are in the future of Kenmore, such as Lake Point and the St. Edward Seminary, and we think this is an opportunity to really showcase some innovative energy efficiency measures, and we'll be discussing that. And then we'll be on the lookout for other standard features of the agreement and make sure that at least, if not more stringent or stronger items are included in that as compared with what the current agreement is. So that is a quick and high-level summary. I'm sure you understand that we'll get into more detail in the discussions themselves, and certainly we'll be reporting back to council as those discussions are pursued. But interested in any kind of general feedback that you have. Are we addressing the right issues in this list that we've provided to you?
Councilmember Smith.
Thanks, Nancy. I think the list is great, and there's a lot of really good information that hopefully we can get our hands on and be able to take a look at as well. I would, on bullet point 1, you mentioned that we'd be getting the information. I would think if we could add in there somewhere along with the other information from the other cities, and I know you verbally mentioned it, but I didn't see anything in here that has any comparison. And one of the problems is they have all the information and they have all the leverage, and in order for us to understand where we are, we need some basis to work from, and it would be really nice to know how we compare with those other municipalities of comparable size. And then the only other thing I would add is on the vegetation management, or I shouldn't say add, I just for a clarification for me, is there a specific standard that they work within when they do their vegetation management in their easements and right-of-ways?
I believe it's on a 4-year schedule now.
So does that mean it's irrelevant where the vegetation is and how, because some vegetation grows faster than others, and so a 4-year schedule could be great if you're pruning ponderosa pines in eastern Washington, but it may be a little different if you're pruning cottonwoods here in Kenmore. And so I would say that would be something that would be
really
nice
dive into that
to know a little bit more information on.
Very good.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sperry.
Well, I didn't ask to be recognized, but thank you. I guess I was just stretching. Well, thank you, Nancy. This is I do appreciate, as Councilmember Smith said, the list and the ask. And I guess I was just sitting here thinking, and I thought, boy, the power outage information would be a great open data map thing. And I was very pleased to hear that the commission that UTC, I think it's called, does require that kind of data. But that would be a really great project for somebody to map that for their region and stuff. So we might even want to consider having someone from the UTC come to a council meeting at some point.
Yeah.
That could be interesting. Thank you.
Councilmember Curtis.
My understanding is that we're at the lower end of their reliability rating for all of the cities they serve. Is there any way to request that reliability will increase to like 50 percentile? Can we be that specific?
Put it on the list.
That'd be average. It wouldn't be like the top, but it'd be way better than we are now.
Councilmember Herbig.
I'm just going to toss out an idea, but I think they need a bigger incentive to make sure that our folks have power and have power quickly. Is there any way we could put in some sort of provision, almost like liquidated damages to their own customers if somebody is without power for, I don't know how long, maybe 24 or 36 hours, so they get a $25 credit or something instead of just not getting charged for the power they weren't getting? Because people out here feel kind of like they're picked on, and this would give them a financial incentive more so than just not selling power to actually get out here and get to work faster. Is that okay?
We'll check that out.
Councilmember Danuski.
Can I weigh in on that? We can certainly ask for things like that, but just know that this utility is regulated by the state, and their rates and their finances and everything are all watched over and regulated by the state. And so if we wanted to impose some sort of financial provision like that, they would most likely try to point to some utilities commission tariff that prevents us from, I'm not saying don't ask, but I don't want us to get our hopes up either, because we might be preempted by another state agency.
Yeah, and I fully recognize that. I just figure it can't hurt to look at it and ask and see if it's a possibility, because I think they need more of an incentive out here to get the power back on sometimes.
Yeah, anything that we raise in discussions, we'll obviously check out with our legal counsel in advance, and we are working with Inslee Best on this.
Councilmember Danuski.
I really like the data. The data is going to set us free on this one, I think. Well, can you tell I'm an engineer? Okay. Circuit 26, definitely getting that easement maintained better is important. They have a few projects on their list with the circuits in the south side of the city and the recloser on Circuit 26. Is there any kind of teeth that we can put in to make sure they actually do that by a certain date?
So noted.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
I think our clout is kind of limited in the situation. I'm feeling that, yes, we might have some asks in this utility agreement, but I think our major effort ought to be put with the Utilities Commission. They're the ones that really have the clout and the ability to regulate and to demand different things of the utilities. Mm-hmm. So I think a friendly relationship with Olympia might get us farther than being hard-nosed on this utility agreement. And I don't think we should be too much more demanding than our neighbors are in other jurisdictions. I mean, they work with these utility agreements in all cities, and for us to be far more restrictive and demanding than anybody else might not get us the compliance that we'd like to see. So I'm thinking that if we can do it through Olympia, we'd probably be better off. And bear in mind that it's a private business as well. And like, we can't go to Safeway and say, we don't like the way you're selling your produce, I want you to change it. Or there's too many rotten apples that people get home, whatever. We can't do that. As long as they're following the code, the rules that we have for operating a business in the city, we can't expect any more of them. So we're kind of limited in what we can do as a city in demanding change from a private business, as long as they're not doing anything illegal.
Well, you're correct about the role of the UTC in regulating those private and investor-owned utilities, and again, we're just wanting to hear what you all care about the most in what we raise in discussions, and whether or not it shows up in the final agreement. And we'll see how it goes over the next number of weeks or months that we're in these discussions. And we do talk to other cities, and some of them are at the point now of adopting a new franchise agreement. So we'll certainly be doing that too.
So this franchise agreement expires in 2015. How long can they go without one?
Defer to legal counsel on that.
I'm not familiar with any case or statute that says if the franchise runs out that the opportunity to be in the right-of-way expires or that the utilities have to be moved. I can tell you from practical experience that I know of many jurisdictions where franchises for utilities have expired and the utilities have been without a franchise for several months or in some cases many years.
So there's no urgency on the on PSE's part to sign a franchise because they can continue to operate for years without one.
On the other hand, we could always if they refuse to sign a reasonable franchise, think about taking them to court to have them remove their facilities from a right-of-way.
We also have the right to take over their facilities. We can buy their facilities, right, and operate our own power company.
Oh, yes, we can buy our own facilities.
So
yes.
we can buy the lines. And
We can buy
whatever.
them, yes.
Yes. So we can essentially have our own. Okay.
More City Light.
Yeah. Yes, we all can take our turn on the hamster wheel, right? And generate power for the city.
We have solar cells on the roof.
That's right. We have solar cells on the roof. So the other thing is, I understand that the UTC controls everything. I mean, they set the rates. They really determine what can be done and what can't be done. But there's got to be this has just been going on for so many years, and I don't know that it's getting better. And our residents continue to suffer hundreds of dollars in losses. I mean, when whole freezers of food go bad, I mean, there's got to be something in the law that will allow the companies to reimburse for these losses, because for people just to suffer and foot these losses themselves, it's just not right. I mean, there's a lot of people who can't afford to go out and buy more groceries. I mean, there's got to be something that we can do. I mean, can you please look into getting language that would support that? And I know the UTC covers it, but I mean, maybe there's something that we can do legislatively. Mr. Casaguma.
The comment I'd like to make is that we can certainly check out the UTC regulation cases. There may be example cases where the UTC has required utilities to develop a reimbursement program. We just don't know, because it's something that's not anything we've ever looked at. But I am familiar with a number of UTC cases from, I think it was late 90s, where advocacy groups on behalf of telephone service groups, they made a lot of requests of the UTC, and my recollection is that many of their requests were granted by the UTC to give ratepayer relief in some, in various ways. So we can take a look at whether there are cases before the UTC that are relevant to rates charged if customers aren't getting proper service. Are the remedies that are available to local jurisdictions that can be imposed through a rate surcharge or a rate tariff? We'll take a look at that.
I just think that people should have the opportunity to be compensated, if at all possible, for some of these lost perishables and stuff that are costing our public so much money. And certainly reliability. Everybody's talked about it. Reliability. We've got to do something about reliability. And one last thing, and then I'll quit. There seems to be a misconception. People look at telephone poles, and there seems to be a huge misconception about tree trimming, because I've seen pictures posted on the internet that show all these cables running through trees, and they're the ones lower down on the telephone pole. They're the communications and television signals and stuff, and yet nobody focuses on the 3 wires at the top of the pole, which is the power wires and the ones that need to be. So I think there's a little bit of education there, too, on as far as trimming goes, as to which wires on the pole are the ones that are really concerned with for the power.
Okay.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I would pursue both things, both on the franchise agreement, the things you're talking about, and then also with the UTC. And I with all respect to our deputy mayor, the Safeway doesn't have a monopoly on bread, and so it's just not fair to. I mean, we don't know that they're doing anything illegal, and I don't even want to say that they're doing anything illegal. What I just want is, I want to know that as a community, as a city, we're being treated to the same standard that is expected in other communities, and we don't have any of that information to know that. And I think that's reasonable, and I guess that's to me right now, that's the most important thing, just to know we live in a beautiful city with lots of trees, so it's also reasonable to expect we're going to have power outages. But it's at the level of repair and re-energizing our system that matters. And it is a quality of life issue for our citizens, so I think it should be very high priority for us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilmember Herbig.
I'm going to go even further than Councilmember Smith. I don't think we should be treated as well as other cities. I think our citizens should be treated better than other folks. I mean, that's our job here, is to represent the people of Kenmore, and we should be getting absolutely the best service we can for people, and right now we're not getting that, obviously. So I think we shoot for the moon and see what we get.
All right. If there's no more questions, we really need to move on and go to full agenda. City Manager.
I just think it's interesting that last 2 times we've talked about this, the power went out right before we talked about these. So maybe we should just stop talking about it, and
that's right.
the power will stay on.
One can only hope.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
usually happens just before the Seahawks go on. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda then is Coast and Harbor Engineering presentation of preliminary concepts for Log Boom Park and Squires Landing Park. Mrs. Bent, we are glad to have you on the schedule.
Your Honor, while they're getting ready and pulling up their PowerPoint presentation, just a couple of things as context. First of all, it's been a City Council goal, one of your top 5 goals, to improve public access to the city's waterfront. We have 7 miles of shoreline, very little of which is publicly accessible, and the little bit that the city does own, that the public does own, could stand to be even more accessible than it is. Also, we've been going through an Imagine Kenmore process where we've been asking citizens what they would like to see in both pedestrian and bicycle safety as well as park improvements. If the City Council were to put a ballot measure forward for citizens to vote on, and if that ballot measure consisted of park improvements, these are a couple of potential candidates that could possibly be on the ballot measure list. That's still too soon to determine that. We still have more analysis to go through from all the input we've gotten, and we'll be reporting to you on that in January. But we're still just trying to do what we can to get things ready if projects like these were to move forward on a future ballot measure. So with that, I will turn it over to Debbie Bent, our Community Development Director.
Thank you. And I think Rob saw some of my notes there because I was going to say some of those things. So thank you, Rob, for saying them for me. So good evening, council members, and tonight we're here to present the conceptual plans and preliminary cost estimates for Log Boom Park and Squires Landing. And we're interested in hearing your feedback and answering questions. And particularly for Squires Landing, we're interested in trying to see if we can focus on either a preferred alternative or taking concepts from option A or option B and coming up with a preferred alternative so we can work from one concept for Squires Landing. With me tonight, I would like to introduce some members of our Coast and Harbour team, and we are very fortunate to have a very experienced team working on this project. We have engineers with Coast and Harbour, we have environmental consultant, Confluence Environmental, and a landscape architect, J. Brennan Associates. So tonight with me I have Jim Brannan with J. Brannan Associates and Shane Phillips with Coast and Harbour, and there are a couple of other team members in the audience who have been here tonight helping take comment on the open house. So we did present the concepts at an open house from 6 to 7 this evening. We were fortunate to have a good turnout. I counted at least 30 people, and I may have missed a few people coming in and out. I think overall we had very positive feedback from the people who were here tonight, who were encouraged that the city was looking at providing access to the waterfront and improved opportunities for recreation. Obviously, haven't had a chance to consolidate those comments as we went right into this meeting, but that will be one of our tasks to do, is to consolidate those comments that we heard. So as Rob mentioned, advancing the public's connection and access to the waterfront is a top council goal, and over the past several years in any of the statistical surveys we've done, providing water and beach access has been ranked very high. In 2006 it was ranked 3, in 2013 it was ranked number 1. And we're just now getting the results in from the statistical survey completed for the Imagining Kenmore project, and it looks like waterfront access, such as areas for boating, paddling, moorage, and beach access, are also going to be ranked fairly high and important for the community. So the concepts that were developed by the Coast and Harbour team, they were not done in a void. They looked at past master plans, they looked at past studies that had been completed, they went out and did a lot of field work to look at the existing conditions, and they also took into account what they've been hearing from the community. So based on that, they developed these concepts. And so what I'd like to do is have Jim run through this PowerPoint presentation to give you an overview of the concepts at both parks and the cost estimates. Following the PowerPoint presentation, we would certainly love to hear your questions and hopefully be able to answer them this evening. So on that note, Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Debbie. Well, we want to thank you for the opportunity to work on these two really exciting waterfront park projects, and it's really been a privilege for our team to work with Rob and Debbie in these exciting developments. We've had a really solid design process to get to where we are tonight, but there's a great chance to get input and guide the design as we're only at a conceptual level. But you can see some of the goals that we started out with for the project. Always thinking about linking people to the water, connection to the shoreline, opportunities for passive and active recreation, trying to build something in there for a diversity of community members, and providing opportunities for environmental restoration. You know, can we clean water as we develop these projects? Can we preserve vegetation? And really thinking of the beauty of the sites as well. The first of the projects is Log Boom Park, and you can see the work area here. We really focused on the shoreline of Log Boom Park, looking for ways to create beach access there, which was something that we heard was of great interest to the public. In our plan, we're proposing 300 feet of beach, but there's a total of 1,700 lineal feet of shoreline there. There's also 950 feet of that as wetlands, so that's a consideration in our design to make sure we preserve those sensitive areas on the site. And I think you're all familiar with this, but the existing pier is located here. The Burke-Gilman Trail, of course, on the north side. The parking lot is located here. There's a really nice restroom within the park and a play area. So trying to build off of the existing resources that we have. The lake does experience the accumulation of some debris in this area, and the upper left-hand slide shows some of those wetland areas along the fringe of the lake. There's also some shallow water areas that we were considering where milfoil has been an issue to get access out to the water, and we've come up with some solutions for that. And there's some really nice meadow areas that could be enhanced somewhat to create some potential group picnic areas and lake viewing. So some of the activities and amenities we considered are listed here. The beach, of course, perhaps a waterfront promenade, improved landscaping, and a hand-carry boat and rental building. And that activity is already taking place there and is quite popular. And in our process, we looked at this program and activities and started thinking about the types of facilities that would be required to really enhance these activities at the park. Stand-up paddle is a really popular sport that's growing in interest, also canoe and kayak. One of the things we thought about was a waterfront promenade. This is Juanita Beach Park, but it shows the idea of seating areas and landscaping to create some really great viewing along the lake shore. Also shows some of the stormwater treatment elements that were built into that project, and there's an opportunity for that at Log Boom Park as well. So this is the conceptual plan that we've come up with, and I'll just point out a few features here. This is the existing wetland area along the shore, the dock. We're proposing some shoreline enhancement in this area where there's a stone riprap. And we're proposing a kayak and canoe boat rental facility here, a small building that could perhaps relate to the restroom building that exists on site. The playground is here and parking. And then about a 300-foot beach in this area here. Then as we move to the west, there would be a lake viewing pavilion, perhaps an opportunity for group picnic. And then people from the Burke-Gilman Trail would be welcomed into the park along this pathway here. But there's also a shoreline path located here, and then some viewpoint access directly off of the Burke-Gilman Trail in these locations. As part of the project, there would be some wetland impacts, and as well as riparian buffers, so we would build into the project some native plantings and habitat enhancements. And there is a possibility for wetland enhancements in several areas within the park, if desired. And then zooming in on the beach area, you can see the sandy beach here, and then to the north, the promenade that we're proposing, and some seating stairs. There could also be seating walls that would perhaps block the movement of geese up into the lawn areas. And then we're proposing just some terrace seating in an amphitheater kind of space directly between the promenade and the Burke-Gilman Trail. And this is the boat rental building, and it's close proximity to the lake. And there would be areas to store canoes and kayaks in the outdoor areas, flanked by some lawn and native plantings to kind of integrate it into the park. The group picnic area is located here. And you can see with the beach, there would be some fill into the lake. One of the things we're looking at is creating a sandy beach that may transition into some gravel and create an easier pathway through the milfoil for easier access out into the open lake area. This is a cross-section of the beach area, and you can see the promenade located in this location, and then buffer enhancement, and then the sandy beach. This is the existing grade right here, and so you can see there is some fill along the shore and then an appropriately engineered slope. We looked at the wave environment there, and that really dictates a lot of the materials and the slopes. And then a cross-section through the boat rental facility, and you can see some storage and direct access to the beach. And then farther to the west, this is that waterfront pavilion that we were talking about, and there's a little bit of a higher shore there, and so it would be nice to have a little facility where you'd get maybe out of the rain and be able to view out into the lake, or a little shade in the summer, and perhaps expand out into kind of a group picnic area. And it creates a nice destination down on the west end of the park, not too far of a walk from the parking lot. We've put together a cost estimate for Log Boom Park, and you can see the total here. It includes the construction costs, construction management, sales tax, engineering and design, and contingency. So $2,492,000 for Log Boom Park. And of course, there's a range, and as you move forward, you can always have the opportunity to phase it in or redirect money in some different ways, but it's good for just starting the discussion. That concludes Log Boom. I could move into Squires, or if there was any questions on Log Boom Park.
Do we have any questions on Log Boom? Councilmember Smith.
Presentation. You mentioned that there were potential wetland enhancement areas that could be utilized. Where are those, and what would the enhancements consist of?
One of the things that we've talked about, since we are impacting some wetland areas in the vicinity of the beach, this area here could optionally become kind of a fringe wetland at the edge of the lake, and you could create a boardwalk in this location. So there is an opportunity here. The grades, it works out pretty good that you could carve a little cove back in here and create, for instance, a marsh or a forested wetland kind of habitat.
Okay, thank you. And so that would be over and above what would be required, or is that when you say it's optional or a potential? I don't understand how that figures into this project? Is that just something to make it more environmentally appealing, or is it something that we would be required potentially to do?
It would be something that would be required for the construction of the beach because there are some impacts to the wetlands. And so we've done a preliminary report on that, but there's going to be a replacement ratio for wetlands that are filled as a result of the beach, and those can either be created here for some of them at least, on Log Boom Park. They could also potentially be created at Squires Landing, which we're going to look at next, which has some capacity. Or there is a fee in lieu kind of program as another option that's been discussed.
Okay, and then I just have one really basic question. When you design a plan like this or at Squires Landing, I assume that when you just commence the initial scope of what you're trying to do, the regulations and the regulatory agencies that have a say in it, are they part of the initial planning from the very beginning and all the way through this in how you arrive at a finished product?
Yeah, it's something that we want to make sure we get connected to the regulators, before we move beyond concept design, and that's where we are now. I would think that this project would be ready to discuss with regulators, as we move ahead in the next step.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Danuski.
Thank you for this concept. It's very awesome to see the possibility of a swimming beach. It's something I've heard about and everybody has seemed to wanted since I've moved here. Couple comments. I like the boat rental building. I think that'd be fun. Have a little ice cream stand. I think the trees. You were going to add some trees. I just say let's make sure to not block people's views up the hill.
Okay.
So appropriately sized trees, maybe. I like the idea. I really like the idea of a swimming beach. I'm worried a little bit about water quality, milfoil, E. coli, and it's a great wetland there, but holy cow, is that a smelly wetland there. I don't know if you've been there in the summer. It's black, it's gooey, it's smelly, there's lots of bugs. So I guess my biggest concern is, if we're going to seriously talk about doing this, we need to make sure we aren't building a swimming beach that nobody can swim at most of the summer.
Yeah, good comments. Thank you.
Your Honor, can I weigh in on that a little bit?
Yes.
So one of the things we would want to do is deal with the aquatic weeds there. And the aquatic weeds do a lot to contribute to that organic, smelly buildup. And so that might help the situation there. Also, one of the things I wanted to point out is this presentation is more of just kind of a check-in with you. It's definitely, as you know, not a finished product. And one of the next things that Coast and Harbor and Brennan and Associates will do, and something you just approved on the consent agenda tonight, is for them to take a look at maintenance and what maintenance will be needed for both of these parks and the costs associated with that. I met with a couple citizens a couple weeks ago that pointed out some of those issues to me if we moved forward with this project, and the meeting with them was very helpful. Because we're at that north end of the lake where you get all those southerly winds blowing all that debris, maintenance is going to be an issue in order to keep it a nice park and maintaining that sand and things like that. So that's a cost and a work plan if the park was developed that we're going to be fleshing out a little bit more. The other thing is, at this point, we're just calling it a beach, not necessarily a swimming beach, because this last summer, Richard Sawyer, our surface water management coordinator, did a lot of testing of the water at the beach and found a lot of samples that were kind of high in E. coli, or what they call fecal coliform. And so we're just kind of learning about that and how to deal with it. Is there something we can influence? Is there a source that we can go after that's causing this? If not, what do we do? Do we move forward with a beach like this? Is it usable, even if there is such a thing as fecal coliform at high levels here? Do you call it a sandy swimming beach, or do you call it just a sandy beach that you might dip your toes in, and that's it? So we're not trying to raise expectations that this is going to be a full-on swimming beach, especially given the shallow depths there. The Juanita Beach Park might actually be a bit of an example there because it's shallow as well, and they also have the same issues with fecal coliform. And so it is a nice place for kids to wade into, but not necessarily dive into, although they do it further out where it's deeper. But so expectations kind of need to be managed here on what kind of a beach it is, and I think that's still to be determined.
Councilmember Curtis.
So I have some family that lives in Eastbourne, right on the coast, and they have to keep hauling in sand and gravel to keep it from washing away, and they have those big groins that go out. Are we going to have the same problem? We're going to have to keep hauling in sand and stuff to make this look like a beach?
Excuse me, good question. And, we, as Jim mentioned, we looked at the wave conditions, and, part of the continuing refinement of this would be to take a closer look at the geometry and the size of material. And one of the things he alluded to was, it would have to be a little coarser material to reduce maintenance long term. So it wouldn't be purely just a sandy beach in the in-water areas. It would be more of a gravelly beach, and then the back beach, the upper dry part, would be the sandy beach, and that would help minimize any maintenance.
Thank you.
Councilmember Herbig.
What can you tell me about the wetlands that would be impacted by the beach?
The existing wetlands fringe Lake Washington, and the water level fluctuates up and down, but if you go out and walk the site now at low lake level, you can see there's some wetland vegetation there. I believe there's some carex, et cetera, that are in that area. So, they're actually, we haven't done a full-on delineation now, but we have an older delineation that was done, I believe, by the city several years back. And some of the criteria have changed, so we'll have to look at that again more closely before permitting any project like this. But there are some wetlands, and since they're connected to Lake Washington, they're seen as fairly high quality wetlands.
How many square feet would be impacted, or acreage, or however you normally talk about these sorts of things?
Yeah, Christina is here tonight, and I can't remember the exact square footage or acreage of the impact. Okay. We can.
While she's looking, Jim, could you zoom out to that bigger picture? Yeah. So the beach that was approved in the 2005 master plan had the beach going. Can you kind of put the mouse where the master plan beach? Yeah. So it had it going in that higher quality wetland there, and to avoid that higher quality wetland, we were actually proposing to shift it to where you see it now. And so avoidance was an important concept and principle that they followed here, but we weren't able to totally avoid. In order to get this beach, some wetlands were impacted, but at least we didn't impact the higher quality one further to the east.
And it's a total of 0.17 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Curtis.
Another question on the wetland itself. Could it be improved so it's not so smelly? Because I have wetlands around my place that are perfectly fun to be around.
Yes, we have the opportunity to do some restoration and enhancement, so that's obviously a choice.
I will say that because of the situation with milfoil and so much organic being pushed up into that wetland, that very possible that there is some smelliness that will be there as a natural wetland that functions as a lake fringe wetland into the future. So whether it can be totally eliminated, improved, yes, totally eliminated.
But as we look at the maintenance, as Rob mentioned, we can look at milfoil harvesting or milfoil removal and control, because I think a lot of, just the aquatic vegetation that piles up there along the shore is actually the milfoil. And so anyway, that's an invasive aquatic weed and can we can remove that and do some maintenance with that, and I think that would help some.
So, couple questions and an observation. I'll start with the observation. We're missing the Geneva-style jet. It's a world-famous landmark, and it would be really nice to have a nice world-famous landmark here welcoming people at Kenmore. So I really will be looking for that Geneva-style water feature. The other thing is, I'm just strictly curiosity. Site furniture, one piece for $25,000. What would that one piece be of furniture?
Well, at this point, we've tried to, just put in some budgetary amounts, and we're not really far enough through the design yet to. I guess my philosophy, and I think Shane, you're with me on that, is we don't like projects where we come in with a really low price, and then all of a sudden, oh, gee, we were miscalculated. It's another $1 million or something. So I think we're trying to put in some pretty hefty budget elements there, and definitely you guys can trim away at it as we go.
Well, that was just curiosity. The other one was the flaggers for another 25. Is that flaggers on the bicycle trail? I'm being facetious. Anyway, any others? Councilmember Sperry.
Well, thank you. It's fun to think about ways we can connect people with the water, and Log Boom is one of our best opportunities at this point. A couple things. Actually, my favorite part about this is actually your waterfront promenade, the walk, because what's part of our pros plan is to have a water walk, and of course, having that connection off of the Burke Gilman is beautiful.
Right.
One of the things is I do share the concerns about the water quality and the smell, whether it's from the wetland and the sewer plant and all of the above, because obviously this is a multi-million-dollar project, and so we want it to be something that the community will value and be able to use. And what I would like to see, this is more for staff, is I would like to, as we are going forward with, looking at the possibilities of what we can do, is, what the water quality aspect of it, to continue to monitor that and to continue to look at ways to do, what we can do to improve that. And then on the smell side, I'm not sure how you do that. I do know that my one experience renting a kayak, it was walk down, and as soon as you got around that corner, it was like, whoa. But the good part was I was getting in a kayak and going on the water. So this is a whole different situation. So obviously, we really need to have some quantifying of this and, what the options are to improve it. The other thing is a little thing, but if we do move ahead with the beach, and if there is concerns about the water quality, you may want to consider some kind of a rinse-off, hose-down thing when people get out of the water.
That's a great comment. Thanks.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes, regarding the water quality, even if it is not a swimming beach, I definitely like the idea of having some open sandy beach area. And if you go anywhere along Puget Sound, there's open areas, and virtually nobody swims in Puget Sound.
Right.
Not nobody, but most people don't. And just to have that open space to be able to enjoy, and it's great southern exposure to sit and have a picnic or whatever. And so I think it's a really valuable space to have it exposed to the water like that. And I however we go with the swimming side, I think is less relevant to me. Then the other question I had is on that pavilion at the far west end. What is the approximate dimension of that?
I think right now we were thinking kind of around the order of, 16 by 16, 20 by 20, 24 by 24.
Okay, so it's pretty good size then for having a picnic. Okay, that was my only thought, is if we're going to build it at all, that at least be big enough.
And it might depend on how you want to use it. If you wanted to have like a group picnic rental facility, we could continue to discuss the size and really try to focus in on the optimum balance there.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. There's a sanitary sewer system there right by the restroom. Have you researched where all those lines are going and whether, I heard some time ago that there was a combined sewer overflow somewhere in Kenmore And if it's here, that may be part of the odor. I don't know. That sewage system building there does have a vent. And
Okay.
I don't know whether we can mitigate that some way.
I believe we did look into that a little bit, but we can check the website. I think King County has a website, and they do identify all the CSO locations, so that's a good thing for us to look into. And during those, big summer storm events, those CSOs can actually occur, around the time when it might be. Then the next day it's real sunny and people want to go swimming, so good point.
Yeah, it's not a big thing here. Usually it's in the Seattle area where they have the combined sewers, sanitary and storm sewer. We have very little of that around here.
Okay,
It's all
excellent.
separated system, but still, if the system gets overloaded, they have to let it out somewhere.
Right, that's a good thing for us to look at. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Any other questions before we move on? All right.
All right, thank you. Great comments. So going to Squires Landing Park, this shows the work area. One of the things that we were really intrigued with this vision of connecting Log Boom Park, which is located here, and this is the Sammamish River. This is Swamp Creek here. And that idea of perhaps someday in the future there could be some kind of waterfront connector, and I think that has some bearing on Log Boom, but in particular for Squires, as we develop this portion of the park, we have to think about this greater park area, and in the future, would people maybe be moving through, and that would affect the widths of the bridges that we might have, and just to make sure it would function with the long-range vision too. So that's very exciting, but it's really one of the most beautiful reaches of the Sammamish River, incredible natural area. I think it's the most beautiful reach of the whole river, really. And then you have the creek as well. There's a beaver dam located about here. Quite a few wetlands throughout the park area. Quite a bit of the peninsula is a wetland, and we also have wetlands within the park area that we're working on. So this shows the entire park and then the area that we're focused on with this project. Just zooming in a little bit.
Yeah, Jim, can you go back to that slide? Sure. That really is a great slide to show how much bigger the whole park is compared to the area that we're zeroing in on. So it's a 45-acre park, give or take a couple acres, and the acreage we're zeroing in on is, do you know?
I think it's about I'm guessing a 3 or 4 acre area, but I haven't.
Okay.
That's something that that'd be nice to add to our report, though.
Sure.
And this shows a photograph of the site. You can see the existing lagoon area here, which is a man-made feature off of the side of Swamp Creek. You can see some of the just gorgeous trees in the area. There's some beautiful native conifers, a big row of cedars. And we know that those are important to the city, and so we're working with the design to try to save those trees and highlight those and integrate them into the park. And then citing some of our development areas where there's blackberries, also trying to avoid existing wetlands where we can. And you can see the lagoon here. This is an area where you could potentially site a boathouse and access the lagoon instead of direct access onto the river, which is one of the alternatives that we're looking at. And then you can see this meadow area here. This is primarily reed, canary grass, and blackberries with some beautiful native trees beyond, but could be converted into a meadow area where you could stage canoes and kayaks and also have picnics and just informal park use there. And looking at some of the current activities that already take place there, like the canoeing and kayak and the dragon boats, it's all very exciting. Somebody invited me to go dragon boating, and so that sounds like there's some great activities going on at this site. One of the things we noticed is there's an easement down to the existing boating facility, and so it's shared with a private road, and it is kind of difficult to back down in there or get a trailer down there. So it's something that we're addressing in one of our alternatives. We, like with Logboon Park, we started out by talking about what are our goals for the project and then coming up with a list of potential activities to include within the site. And so this idea of, as we develop the parking lot, can we have rain gardens, spelled correctly, but can we have rain gardens with treatment of that stormwater so that we're not adding to the problem but doing it in a sustainable way, creating opportunities for docks, floats. Can you get out on the water a little bit? Is there a beach along the edge of the lagoon that you could launch a hand carry boat launch? We have to have well-designed parking with ADA facilities, also boat and our car and trailer parking, a restroom, picnic area. These are the things that we wanted to integrate in both of the alternatives. We were also given some sketches of the desired boathouse, and you can see there's a 3-story facility with floats and a boat storage and kind of staging area between the boathouse and the lake. So once we had that program and then analyzed the site, we developed 2 different alternative schemes, and we'd love to present these to you for consideration. Option A, in this scheme, we cited the boathouse instead of its current location, which is out on this sort of isolated area with that driveway and easement access. We located it here on the lagoon with floats onto the lagoon. This is the building itself right here. And then there's a paved plaza area that would be for the boat staging. We also have easy access for the canoes and an accessible pathway route to get down to that area to launch and get out onto the floats. Also a big meadow area potential for staging boats and then getting down into a small beach, and then the opportunity to store canoes and kayaks on a float in this location. One of the things that we know we need to do is offset some of the impacts or do some mitigation to enhance, for instance, fish habitat. And so we're proposing a dredging and a creation of a side channel habitat here, which we wouldn't encourage. We might even discourage boat access into that with some logs. Perhaps dredge the existing channel, widen that a little bit for better boat access. And then that ends up creating an island, which would be really interesting, and I'll show you a section of that in a minute. A bridge over to the peninsula across Swamp Creek, and then some spectator areas along the shoreline. In contrast, you'll see alternative B has a pathway set back from the shoreline with some dead-end viewpoints out to spectator areas. We are showing the interim boathouse located here, which until this one is up and running, we could continue to operate out of that location. We're saving the trees up in the parking lot as much as possible. We have 30 stalls and then 6 car and trailer parking areas. We want to encourage pedestrian access and alternative transportation, so we've got some park entries along 175th and really good pedestrian connections into the park. And it is anticipated in the future this trail would continue, as we talked about, that waterfront network, or would it ever continue out this way? That's something to think about. How would that affect the width of this bridge? And cross-section through the island that we talked about, the deepened channel, and then this channel would be primarily for rearing habitat and additional fringe wetlands. There could be buffer enhancement and a removal of invasives and a lot of native vegetation added. And then the cross-section of the boathouse, it shows the way the grades work out. You could kind of tuck it into the landform and create really nice level access on the lakeside, and then level access off of the parking lot, and then have handicap accessible ramps flanking the building. Obviously, we didn't get into the architecture, but you could come up with some really great architecture that presents a Kenmore character to it and really create a nice looking building. Option B, just a contrast. We've added some parking in this area. We've kept the boathouse in this portion of the site. We've got the car and trailer parking located here. There is a restroom showing one of the things with the restroom is we want to site that as it's initially developed in a way that would allow for future phasing of additional parking if needed in both schemes. And then the boat access out into the river would be here, and you can see the contrast of setting that pathway back and having some spurs out to the edge of the river, and what kind of experience is more desirable. The cost for this option is, this is option A rather, backing up, and this one is $3,900,000. And then option B, where the boathouse is left more or less in its similar location, is $3,800,000. That's it. Any questions or comments?
Oh, let's just go right on down. Councilmember Smith.
Okay. One of the questions I have with regards to concept A, and it has wetland mitigation taking place right where the existing place has significant utilization at the park. It's right where basically where the existing double wide sits. Mm-hmm. And my question to you is, because that area is kind of a prime spot, just because of the way it's situated and everything, and both at the confluence of the creek with the river, is there any way to move that wetland mitigation to a different location, or does it have to be right there in a prime spot?
No, I don't think it does, and it really brings up an important point, is wherever we put the mitigation, we want to make sure it doesn't preclude future development, or make it more difficult to expand a parking area even 20, 30, 40 years from now. So we were just kind of exploring the possibilities, and that was one area where we could put mitigation, and it wouldn't really push buffers closer to the upland part of the park. But I think there's a lot of land on that peninsula area south of Swamp Creek that could be used.
Okay, I would encourage that. I mean, we have an easement there too, and not that we need to continue to drive vehicles back there on a regular basis, but it just seems like a great spot to have some future use of some sort. And anyway,
thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sperry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, thank you. My question on option A is how does a vehicle that's going to drop off a boat get to that point, to the new boathouse?
Okay, so with this option, they can come in this driveway here and loop through, do load and unload here, and then the boats can be carried down an accessible ramp. It's not too steep to walk down this path and then get to the staging area along the shore or to a little beach that's created here. So there is, and then the car and trailer parking is located here.
So there would be some. Have to carry them. They can't drive right up to it.
Right. Alternatively, I mean, you could create, a load and unload zone a little closer. Like, for instance, you could, we were thinking of parking expansion into this area if needed in the future, so you could create a loop through here or something if you wanted to bring them a little closer.
Well, I like the idea of moving, creating a better access than the current shared easement. And so I just wanted to make sure that it was workable for people, because we actually do have people that are like para-canoeists and kayaks and stuff like that. So,
okay, thank you.
Ways to make sure that the boats can get down there.
Excellent.
So.
Good comment. Thanks.
Councilmember Curtis.
I had one question that was related here on option A. How far is it actually from that parking lot in the northeast corner to the plaza, to the beach there?
I believe this is 60 feet right here, this bar scale, so it's like about 120 feet to get to the plaza, and probably getting up toward 175 feet to the float.
Okay. And then second question, the little extra channel that goes through there to bring fresh water into the lagoon, besides being fish friendly, and it'll also help clean the lagoon.
Yes, I think it.
Instead of having the slime in there all the time.
So yeah, there's a dual benefit. It'll provide water quality improvements, increase flushing through the lagoon as well.
Does that count as mitigation because it's doing good things for fish and water, or that counts against us?
Mitigation, I believe.
Okay.
That's the purpose for mitigating for the floats and some of the overwater structures with the bridges and everything else. That's kind of the intention.
Because it seems like in some designs that we did several years back, there were more of those little waterways, like in multiple places for fish-friendly habitat. And I kind of like that idea. So if we wanted to mitigate something and put a few of those little fish-friendly places, I think all the folks who would like to see salmon back in Swamp Creek someday would be happy.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councilmember Herbig.
So I have kind of a similar concern that Councilmember Smith had about especially option A. It kind of makes me feel like we almost wasted our money purchasing the Tweet property with how that property is utilized in that particular plan, because it's almost completely mitigation. The dock is almost inaccessible from the parking lot, and the dock's the main reason, frankly, that we bought that land. And so, I don't know, I'm not 100% comfortable with the use of that particular part of that in option A. I'm also, frankly, a little concerned about the bulk of a 3-story boathouse in the middle of kind of a natural area. I understand the need for it, I support the need for it, but I'm trying to figure out if there's other ways that we could kind of mitigate its impact or address the needs of the boating community with a less substantial or less imposing building, because 3 stories is not, it's not a small building in the middle of a park. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that's something good to consider. One of the things we can do is tuck it into this landform here, and essentially it would only be a 2-story building from this view. And then adding landscaping, you know, there's going to be some need for buffering and enhancement around the edge of the lagoon, and tuck that building into some landforms and some vegetation around it would help. You could, as you get into the architectural part of the project, look at a 2-story option and explore, you know, then the footprint would be a little bit bigger, but that would be well worth looking into to kind of explore the potentials there.
And the differences between A and B as far as out on the peninsula goes, is there I assume we could do whichever type of walk we wanted, regardless of which option we picked.
Right, you can definitely mix and match. And
So one of the reasons with the offset portion is that it's easier for permitting because you're avoiding direct impacts along the shoreline there. So that choosing the battles as far as permitting goes.
No, I understand. I appreciate having the options. Thank you.
Councilmember Danuski.
All right, most of my comments have actually been said. My number one was the wetland being in what I think is my favorite part of the entire park. You know, there's a lot of active kayak area in there, but there's a lot of people that are just going to want to go down and sit and see the birds, and so yeah, I would love to see that. You know, the main area of the Tweet property with the wetland mitigation be somewhere else. I really like the Riverside Pavilion. It's in option A and not in B. I like it. I think there'll be quite a few people who just want to go and have a picnic down at the edge of the water there. I was talking to a lot of the people looking at the boards earlier, and the kayak-friendly people seem to like the idea of the option A boathouse up near the parking, but I'm sure you'll see that. And then just making sure that there's a good load-unload area will be important, because that parking lot will fill up very quickly.
all right, good. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
A couple of things. On the trails, we've got a lot of asphalt there that is actually going into areas that might be wetlands. That I think, I don't know whether you can do that. And when you say boardwalk, do you mean just on concrete pilings or pin piles, or what type of boardwalk? We toured a wetland down in Auburn that was pin piles, so long things going in and supported on above the ground that way. And we also more recently went on a tour with Army Corps of Engineers and in the Foster Island wetland trail system.
Oh, right.
That doesn't have boardwalks, it doesn't have asphalt, it has wood chips that are natural, and they tend to decompose, and they sort of are floating on top of the wetland, and it makes a perfectly good trail. I don't know whether it's legal to do that anymore, or whether the codes have changed and that's not.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to permit a pin pile, and I think your idea of the pin pile is great because it's a really low impact construction. You can just come in with your materials and a jackhammer essentially and drive these pipes in. The bridges may take more than that, but anyway, the pin piles.
Not inexpensive to do it that way, though, I don't think.
No, it's rather expensive, but it's a lot lower maintenance, and it's easier to permit, and it's a really nice experience when you get on those pin pile boardwalks and you're looking down at that nice wetland environment, and it really keeps people and dogs kind of out of that more sensitive environment. So it's.
Does everybody on the council understand what a pin pile boardwalk is? Okay.
Yes, we do.
The other concern I have is similar to others. If we've got a developed active area with a tweet property, and we're going to develop an active area on the other side of the lagoon, is it an either or? Do we have to abandon one to do the other? Or could we maintain both with somewhat active, maybe get rid of the double wide motorhome there, but turn it in more of a pedestrian kind of a park rather than they could launch on that dock too, but.
Right, I think you can. We put the wetland mitigation in there as an option, and then B doesn't have it, but mixing in that as an upland kind of recreation area with viewing of the river. I think that's doable. There's a fair amount of mitigation that's going to be needed, but I think it can happen, on the rest of that site. If you go back to that bigger picture map, I know there's some limitations there, Debbie, that you've mentioned, but. You can look for other areas on the site to do the mitigation, I believe.
The other concern I had is you have the side channel coming in, and you've got circulation around that island, but the bulk of that lagoon, the water isn't flowing through it. And is the hydrology of that going to be sufficient to get that water clean, or would that side channel have to come in up farther north towards the highway towards the end of the lagoon?
Right. Well, I think in the subsequent phase, one of the things we'll have to take a closer look at is what the dimensional requirements of some of the channels are to increase flushing, and do a little bit of additional analysis and modeling to optimize what those sizes need to be to get to the water quality improvements.
Sure. Okay.
One factor we would consider, like as we build this as a mitigation feature, then it's likely that the buffer then moves back that much. So if you start, the more you kind of move into this area, then you kind of lose some of the recreational use of these areas, and there's more permitting challenges. So that's something to be aware of as we move ahead too.
Yeah, if I could jump in here, I think as we improve the perimeter of the lagoon, we'll see improvement in the water quality around it, especially if we keep the aquatic weeds down. Also, we initially looked at doing that new channel to go up further north to the top of the lagoon, but I directed them to leave that stand of cedar trees alone. I didn't want to mess with that stand of cedar trees that's there. Yep, right there. And so because of that, we kind of stayed below that area there in order to protect that cedar stand.
All right. So I like, and I agree with Councilmember Smith and others. I certainly like A, but the mitigation really needs to be somewhere different, because there's a lot of people who use that lawn, that use the current lot for picnics and for a number of things besides the boating. It's a great viewing spot. I certainly like the viewing areas that you've got with option A. I understand the need for what you're indicating in B for the viewing areas, but I certainly appreciate A there better. And 40-some acres to mitigate, that's a whole lot of land that we could do some mitigations on. The other thing is the 6 cedar trees that were just mentioned. I've heard more than once there's some significance to the American native tribes. I've got some calls in to a number of tribes in the area to try to find out what that is, but I'm glad to see that we are leaving them alone until we get some more indication. So, City Manager?
Yeah, one thing, this has already been pointed out, forgive me, but one potential challenge with option A is putting a more active use than what that property's been used for on that site, because, as you know, it was acquired many years ago with state park funding, and there are deed restrictions that go along with that. We're not saying they're insurmountable, but we would need to work with the state and the county on making sure that if we want to move forward with this use, that we can, and under what conditions.
Wasn't there a boat manufacturer on a large part of the property that we're looking at doing?
Yeah, and that was prior to the acquisition by the county and with the use of the state funds.
Anything else? Councilmember Smith, we still have a lot on the agenda.
Yep.
So
I have just one more comment to add, and when you build this, or we build this, it would be very appealing to a lot of people. And so I would ask that somewhere in here we make sure to plan for the storage of many canoes and kayaks for residents and citizens that will use the park.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, can I say one more thing? I would just want to reiterate for the record that the cost estimate you saw tonight does not include the cost of the actual boathouse structure. I just want to make sure that's clear for the record.
It was on there on the line there, Robbers.
Yep.
So the cost was there, but it wasn't included in the total cost.
all right. Do you have what you need from us?
I've heard, I think, that there seems to be, not, I don't know if it's a consensus, but for option A at this point.
With, I think, some
With the exception of
mitigation and
the
whatever.
mitigation and some taking into account some of the other comments, but it seems like option A is
And if I could also add that without a funding source identified to actually build this thing, we're going to be doing very little additional work on this. So somebody mentioned that we'll be consulting with the agencies. I actually don't think we're going to be in your next little scope of work. Is that correct? That wasn't in your scope. So we don't want to be spending money on things like that until we actually have some level of confidence that this might actually get built.
Okay, log movement, you got clear direction on that one?
Yes.
Wonderful. And the same goes for log movement, correct?
Yep.
Funding.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mrs. Bent, looks like you're on the schedule a lot here, so we will go with next item on the agenda. Do we want to take a couple minutes? I'm seeing yes. I'm seeing no. I'm seeing maybe. Okay, looks like the majority are fine. Next item on the agenda, Lake Point Commercial Site Development Permit, Transportation Mitigation Agreement Extension. Mr. Carlinsey, you moved on me. And Mrs. Bent.
Thank you, Your Honor, and members of the City Council. This is an exciting night for a variety of reasons, one of which is Lake Point. As you know, the Lake Point project has been permitted for many years now. It received its commercial site development permit back in 2001, and the permit has been extended more than once over the years. And a year or two ago, the Pioneer Towing entity that currently owns most of Lake Point entered into a purchase and sale agreement with Widener Apartment Homes. And we have here on my right Kieran Hines, who is the acquisition and development manager for Widener Apartment Homes. And a little later you'll be able to hear from him and be able to ask him a few questions about the project. But Widener Apartment Homes is looking at this project and looking at doing a pretty large-scale mixed-use development on this site. And like I said, they're in a purchase and sale agreement, but they're still very early, and it's still very preliminary. It's definitely not a done deal by any means. But in order for them to fully do their due diligence on this property and take the time they need to plan for this property, they are requesting that we once again extend the deadline for the commercial site development permit and the transportation mitigation agreement that goes along with that permit, both of which expire at the end of this year. In your council bill, you'll see some background on that. Under Municipal Code 18.105.060, the city manager has the authority to grant extensions to site plan permits such as this one under certain conditions. And given the fact that we have Widener putting a lot of resources and planning into this project, and given the current deadline on the permit, I am going to grant this extension. But given the significance of this project, I wanted to do so in open session to make sure that the public knows about this extension, because this, like I said, this is a big project for our city and can do a lot to transform our downtown and bring some much-needed improvements to that area. So you also see in the council bill, you'll see attached to that council bill the extension letter. I have not yet signed it. I plan on doing so tomorrow. That extension letter gives them 2 6-month extensions under certain conditions. The first condition is that Widener pay for project management and incidental consultant costs during the extension periods. And the rest of the letter has other conditions as well, depending on which extension period we're talking about. So with that, I'd like to turn the time over to Kieran Hines. And before I do so, I actually want to just mention we have a really great Lake Point team, is what I'm calling it here, internally with the city organization. And just 2 members of that team are to my left, Brian Hampson and Debbie Bent. I have other members of that team sitting over there, and ones you don't even see here tonight. This project is significant enough that we really do want to have our A team on this, and we do. And this is going to be a fun project for us all, but it's also going to probably give us a lot of gray hairs because we've got a lot of issues to work out, none of which, in my opinion, are insurmountable. But this will be a challenging but also a rewarding project. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kieran Hines.
Thank you, Rob. As Rob mentioned, Kieran Hines, Acquisitions and Development Manager for Widener Apartment Homes. Plan to tell you a little bit about Widener. We are a locally based, privately held owner, operator, and developer of quality apartment communities. We're based just down the road in Juanita Village. Been there for an awfully long time. I'd like to emphasize that privately held component of being an apartment owner, because that is very unique in the development community. All decisions are made right down the road in Juanita, and we're not driven by equity partners or shareholders. So that makes it a very exciting place for me to work, and we're able to move quickly and make intelligent risks. Our portfolio includes more than 230 apartment communities in 10 states and 4 provinces of Western Canada. We are also an active developer. We have currently 9 projects under construction, totaling over 2,000 apartment homes. I'd like to tell you a little bit about one of our more exciting projects, which is here locally in Woodinville. It's called Wooden Creek Village. We're under construction right now in the first phase of that, which is 237 units of what will eventually be an 800-plus unit, 60,000 square foot plus commercial and retail component. And it speaks a little bit to our experience with large projects, large dynamic mixed-use developments. It's also an important extension of downtown Woodinville. So there's an awful lot of complexity and analysis that goes into these scale of projects, and we do have, Rob mentioned the gray hairs that are coming with this one. I think I've sprouted my first few, but it's going to be a long process, and it's one that we're excited by. Specifically on Lake Point, it is 47 acres of Lake Washington and Sammamish River waterfront, and that is incredibly unique, as I'm sure you can imagine. Rob surprised me and said, "Hey, we're not the only ones who have control of this type of parcel," when he mentioned the park that you're working on earlier, and but these blocks of land are difficult to come by, and we realize and appreciate it is such a unique opportunity. As Rob mentioned, we've recently put the property under contract, and we are early in feasibility. Number of very complex issues to tackle. I think the one we've been focused on most recently is traffic, which entails involvement of State Department of Transportation. But we are optimistic. We have a great consultant team in place and are encouraged by the efforts that the city's making and the teamwork that we've been kind of able to establish thus far. Our goal is to create a dynamic waterfront district with a successful mix of housing, retail, and office space, an exciting place to live, work, and play. We understand and appreciate that this is a unique opportunity for Kenmore to connect to its waterfront, and that is a very significant goal for us to pull that connection off successfully and make this a place that people want to be. We, as I mentioned, greatly appreciate the support we've received from Rob and his team thus far, and look forward to coming before you in future council meetings with some more exciting and developed site plans and development concepts. So.
Any questions?
Questions? Councilmember Smith.
Well, thank you very much, and of course this is just exciting to have you here, and it's something that everybody in this room has been looking forward to, at least seeing some progress and seeing some fun and exciting things happening there. So with that, I just want to welcome you, and I'm excited to have you working with the city and see what you can pull together. I have just one question, and it's on this memorandum from the traffic study. Can you provide some insight, because for the life of me I can't figure out how the conclusion was that traffic is less today than it was from 1997.
First of all, thank you for the welcome. It is great to be here. Not surprised that you jumped to that, because I have to say, when I first read that statement, it's a surprising one, and I would say that our consultant, when they were doing the initial traffic counting, and I can't get into the real technical aspects of traffic engineering, but my understanding is, this was a fairly limited review that they undertook during this latest summer, which may not be the optimal time to get a very clear picture of absolutely everything. But that said, I think the initial EIS that was completed for the Lake Point project was done back in, a lot of the studies were done back in the late 90s, when we were at a peak time in the economy, the dot-com boom. So you were evaluating it at a very high traffic count time back then, and we've obviously had a couple economic downturns since. We understand with toll avoidance and the amount of traffic that's occurring regionally, traffic is going to be a huge driver for this project. And so, yes, that is what our data indicated when we went out and collected, or when we had our consultant go out and collect data recently. We completely understand that's going to be the first of many studies, and we're working with the city to scope that future traffic study.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Again, I appreciate you working with the city and anything you can do. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, like Karen said, there's going to be more in-depth studies, including a more in-depth traffic study done. So this was just I'm viewing it as a brief snapshot, but what comes with the new traffic study will tell us even more.
So, there is a lot of excitement here with us. I mean, we've been trying for certainly the 12 years that I've been on the council, and I know for the time that everybody else has been on the council, to make sure that the framework that we've laid down in our ordinances and our codes will allow development like this to happen. We're just really excited to have a group like yours looking at the prospects and looking at the potential, and we are very excited to hear in the future of what you're finding out and where this could be going. So we thank you for the entrance. Deputy Mayor.
Just one general question, and if you're not prepared to answer it, fine, but I'm just curious as to what comes next after this. Do you have any idea on timeline, or is this a 20-year proposition or a 3-year proposition before we really see anything happening, assuming everything goes?
Sure. We plan to spend the next year that is provided for in this extension, further analyzing traffic, furthering site planning concepts that we've explored at a very preliminary stage so far. But as we continue to assess traffic and some of the needs that stem from that, we'll move forward into conceptual site planning, and that's the point where we'll be excited to bring forth some development concepts, some more specific information on unit counts and what that mix of uses looks like. I would say, we certainly contemplate that it's going to be a phased project. I don't know if 20 years, it's probably early to say what the full duration of that looks like. Obviously, a lot depends on the economy. I will say we're a long-term owner developer, and that's the way we think. So we aren't planning on slamming this thing through as quickly as possible in hopes of selling it as soon as we open the doors, because that's just not how we operate. So that is, we're fortunate to have a lengthy contract period on the property, and we don't plan to take any types of shortcuts in analyzing the project. And there's going to have to be a ton of environmental and traffic, you name it, shoreline, analysis done. And so we're ready to take that on and proceed.
Thank you. Anything else? Councilmember Sperry.
Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you also for participating in the charrette on the traffic. And part of me wants to know what's the craziest idea that came out of that.
We heard some good ones, and things that I'd say probably the largest one was the idea of essentially a buried travel lanes of 522 with
undergrounding it.
with a roundabout that would circulate traffic above that. And I don't know the specifics of how you pull that off. It sounds very complicated, but
there you go. Let's go big, right?
But yeah, that's
great.
That was a good one.
All
and
right.
we even talked about a gondola.
Correct.
Now, I actually think that's cool. So.
No idea was a bad idea that day.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, we'll look forward to hearing some more ideas as this progresses. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to have you come in front of us.
Thank you.
Been looking forward to this for many years. Next item on the agenda, Kenmore business registration update. Chelsea, I didn't. Welcome back. Teresa, nice to see you here. Don't get the opportunity very often to see you in that side of the table.
Time of night.
That too.
Well, Mayor and Council, this is destined to be the late night presentation. We were on the agenda several weeks ago, and things were just running too late, and so we wanted to come back at a different time to talk about the business registration program. As you may remember, the council passed the ordinance in 2013 creating the local business registration, general business registration for Kenmore. And I am joined here tonight by a couple of our team members who you don't get to see in presentations very often, but Teresa McAllister from the City Manager's Office is here, and Brian Randall from Finance and Administration is here. And they are two of the people who really make this program work. And so I wanted them to have a chance to tell you a little bit about the experience that we are having now with the registration. So, okay, I did that. Sorry. Beginning. All right, here we are. The program was adopted in April of 2013. The official rollout to the business community was in the spring of 2014. And just kind of, because some of you weren't on the council at that time, it's kind of interesting to look back on, well, what were things like before the ordinance was adopted? This is one of the things that was called out in the 2009 Economic Development Strategy, is to create a general business registration program. And at that point, when we were working together on the ordinance, Kenmore was only one of 5 cities in all of King and Snohomish County that did not have a general business registration or business license program. It was a real challenge to connect with the business community. We didn't have a local business organization at that time. Whenever we did a business event, we purchased a mailing list or purchased mailing services from a company, and the invitations to a business event went out to just over 500 businesses. But we knew we just weren't reaching a lot of businesses. And it was also kind of distressing to hear from our development services staff that quite often they would get inquiries from businesses who were thinking about coming to town or who were just new to town, and they asked, so where do I get my local business license? And the fact that we didn't have a registration sometimes gave the unintended message to those businesses that, you know, the city wasn't really wanting to engage with local businesses. And obviously these were businesses who were accustomed to getting general business licenses where they did business. So the council priorities that were made very clear to us as we were working on the ordinance was obviously do a better job of connecting with our businesses, business communities, and establishing a Kenmore business directory was something that there was a great interest to, not only for businesses to get their information out online, but for those people who really were interested in shopping local, supporting local businesses, to have that directory. You wanted a low-fee program, and emergency contact information being available to public safety agencies is another benefit that the council was interested in doing. So just very briefly, the basic requirements are that businesses who are physically located in Kenmore or nonprofit organizations are required to get a business registration. It's not necessary. You know, some cities say even if you're not located in Kenmore, you are in the city, you need, but you're doing business in a city, you need to get a local business license. That's not the way that our program works. It's only for businesses who are physically located here. But if you have more than one location in Kenmore but it's the same business, you only have to have one registration. We are partnering with the Washington Department of Revenue Business Licensing Services on administering the program. That has turned out very, very well for us. They handle all the reminders, all the processing of the fees. Businesses can take care of this online. It's very convenient, and they are available by phone if businesses have questions while they're registering. The local fee is $10, and that is added to a DOR administration fee. So a new registration is $29 a year. Renewals are $21 a year. So over 60 cities work with the Department of Revenue on this program. And another nice thing for them is sometimes businesses have to have multiple endorsements or other kinds of registrations or permits from the state. They can have one renewal date, for all of the endorsements that they're required to have. So there was a launch after working through all the setup with DOR in the spring of 2014. All of the businesses in their system that had a Kenmore address somehow were sent a letter saying, we think maybe you're doing business in Kenmore, there's a new registration requirement, and please send in this letter with this information to get your registration. And for the 2 months that this deadline was in place, about 500, I think, businesses took advantage of that, and so we had a good, strong nucleus of businesses registered early on. So Teresa's going to talk a little bit now about what happens when businesses do register, and you can see now that we have almost 800 businesses registered in the city.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. I'm Teresa McAllister from the City Manager's Office, and I'm very honored to be working with the business registration program. When new businesses register, the Department of Revenue Business Licensing Department sends us monthly reports of a full list of all businesses that are registered. They also send us a separate list of which businesses newly registered. And so when I receive those, I contact each individual new business and welcome them, and by sending them a letter and just thanking them for participating and helping the city connect with better and better serve our business community. And as you can see, the number of businesses that have registered did increase regularly. Right about the year mark, there were a couple of dips in the numbers, and those dips represent businesses that have closed or businesses that may be more than 120 days delinquent on their account. And once they pay, of course, they get added back. And you want to go to the
next slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Brian is going to talk about what we've learned about the businesses that have registered.
So the data to date shows that we have a lot of home occupations here in the city of Kenmore. 63% of the registered businesses are located in their home and not out along 522 or any in the main business areas, which Nancy talked about earlier, but made it a challenge to connect with all these businesses since we didn't really know where they were located or they even did business in Kenmore. So now that we have this registration process, we have the contact info that we can get a hold of all these businesses, and it's a lot better way of getting to them. The data also kind of tells us what type of businesses that are located in Kenmore, and the majority of them are contractors in the new construction and the remodel business. Landscapers are also, we got a few landscapers that are located here. And another category that had multiple businesses were writers, artists, and graphic designers that were all kind of lumped together. It also shows that about 250 businesses that have registered have not told us what classification code they are. So we really don't know what type of business they are based upon their name, so we don't have their classification code. But hopefully we can get that in the future. Kenmore Business Directory, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide, so I'll move on to that. Who's missing? Some of the businesses that have out-of-date information with the Department of Revenue, so we can't find them. So there's a group of businesses that have been located in the city of Kenmore for a long time that maybe have a Seattle mailing address, but they didn't pop up in our initial mailing. So we're missing a few of those. There might be a few businesses that are confused with our regulatory business license. Some may think that they have the regulatory business license and they don't need to do the business registration, but that is not the case, and the code is being currently updated, so so it's less confusing, so businesses know that they do need to do both of those. And sometimes some of the larger companies have corporate offices that are located out of state or located out of Kenmore, and we may not have their contact information, or the local is not forwarding the information on to corporate, and so we're not getting those. But we're doing our best to pick up all of those businesses.
One thing that the council was also really clear about when we were working on the ordinance was that you weren't interested in enforcement that was heavy-handed at all, and so we're going with that. We're preferring to get notices out in the local media and just encourage people to get registered, because there are benefits that go along with registration. So one of those benefits is the opportunity to get your business registered in the Kenmore Business Directory. Teresa's going to talk a bit about that.
Well, the online Kenmore Business Directory is free to registered businesses. And to view the directory, you can go to findkenmore.org. We have our own website for that. It's also accessible through the city's website. Businesses can be listed in the city's online directory at time of registration. They have the opportunity to complete a survey or questionnaire at the time of registration or renewal. If they decide at that time not to list, they can later go to the city's website and click on the link to the Department of Revenue's Business Licensing Division, again, to access that survey. Once a business has been added to the directory, once again, I get to connect with them personally. I send them a letter welcoming them to the directory, and we get to send a window cling that looks just like that icon right there, and also a sticker, placard. And yeah, it says shop more, play more, find more, Kenmore. And it also shows the directory's website.
So, and you may recall that this symbol was designed by a local Kenmore business, Troy Turner of V2 Works. So now, being in the finance department, Brian's going to talk about revenue and expenditures.
So this slide shows the revenues and expenditures that are affiliated with the business registration for 2014 and 15. As you can see, 2015 on the revenue side is a little bit lower than 2014, and there are a couple reasons why. And the first one is the first 2 months of the program, as Nancy talked about, there was a conversion time that businesses could transfer over into the business registration program. And during that time, there actually was a $21 fee that the city received instead of the $10 fee. So there was about 500 businesses that paid the $21, and there is no admin fee for the state. So they actually only paid $21 for the year. And then the second reason why for the second year is for the $10 portion, it's being prorated because the Department of Revenue is kind of syncing up their renewal process to the same time our renewal process is. So there are quite a few businesses that aren't paying the full $10 in 2015, but they will be paying the full $10 in 2016. So, and they're just prorating that to get on the same schedule of renewing. The expenditures, there's a list of expenditures that on this slide that are the main ones. The Bothell Chamber of Commerce for Kenmore Business Alliance, the Business Director Creation and Maintenance that Teresa talked about, the logo design that Nancy talked about, and special business events throughout the whole year. And they were higher in 2014 because we did have some upfront costs and one-time costs that we didn't have in 2015.
From the beginning, we wanted to put any kind of revenues right back into the business community, and so that's what we've been able to do with this. And where we didn't have a business organization in 2013, now we do, the Kenmore Business Alliance, and we did sign a contract with the Bothell Chamber to staff that alliance, which they have been doing, and so that's going to be one of the ways that revenue goes back into the community. So the benefits of the program have been pretty obvious to us. That it is really so much easier to maintain contact with the business community, and more importantly, it really sends a message that the city values our local businesses here and wants to keep in touch. Obviously, it's easier to buy local, having the online business directory, and there are efficiencies that our organization has realized, because now we have like doubled the size of that mailing list that I talked about earlier. So whenever there's an event or anything that we want to get the word out to the business community, not only can it go out to over 1,000 people, but most of those messages go out electronically. So it saves money for printing and mailing costs. Importantly, too, North Shore Fire and the Kenmore Police are members of our team, and so that emergency contact information, and Deputy Mayor, I think you cited an example of when you had your business in Monroe, and that was a really nice feature of Monroe's program, because the emergency contact information for each business was available to the fire department or police department, and so that has been excellent too. And as I mentioned, we have a really good staff team. We've built in redundancies, so that if someone isn't in the office, there's someone else who can step into their place. And we gave the fire marshal Jeff LaFlamme the night off tonight. He was thinking about joining us, but he'll come at a different time. So here we are in 2015. The Kenmore Business Alliance has actually outgrown its original meeting space and meets here at City Hall first Thursday morning of every month. And we continue to have the business after hours a couple times a year. Those have grown every single time. And what we really like to see at those events, and some of you have been able to join us at those events, is there like new people that we haven't met before and new businesses that have come to town, which is really cool that they are reaching out to each other. And as far as the businesses that haven't had a chance to register yet, we're continuing to reach out to them on a regular basis to encourage them to get registered and help us keep in touch with them and connect with them. So with that, thanks for your attention, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Sperry.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I think I really liked how you're reaching out with the welcome letter to the businesses. I remember years ago a business owner saying, I relocated in Kenmore and got nothing. So that's not the case anymore, and that's good news. So I do have a question on the findkenmore.org. How is that publicized? How do people know about the business directory?
Well, we try and combine the information about, hey, have you had a chance to register your business yet, with this, and kind of actually lead off with, do you want to be able to reach out to your community, have your business listed? Only if you are registered can you have your business listed, and you want to support local businesses. So we have that right on the same publicity. We can always do more, but yeah, like I said, we're doing ads on a regular basis in the Kenmore Reporter, and every single city newsletter that goes out has a notice about registration and the directory too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So I'm just curious here. If I go on the City of Kenmore's homepage,
yep.
If I go under resident services, business services, anyone thinks, I don't see business directory. It's not prominent, where a resident would go and find what businesses are here in the city that they might be able to use. Is there a reason that we don't have?
I was just looking at that not long ago, and I think we can definitely dial that up so it's more prominent.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a business and paying the registration fee, boy, I'd sure be able to want to simply be able to find my business.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do better on that one.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very informative. I'm glad we got you on this time.
Yes.
All right. Next item on the agenda. Planning Commission appointments. Ms. Mintz. Sorry, Chief. You're soon. You're soon.
I'm just following his lead.
He wrote the schedule.
Sure. So, Council, it's that time of year where four of the Planning Commission terms are expiring at the end of this year. And 3 of the 4 would be interested in reappointment. And one of them has other commitments, and so is not interested at this particular time. So you have options for how you could fill the 4 vacancies. You could reappoint the existing commissioners. You could appoint commissioners from the existing alternates list that you created when you did the interview process at the beginning of this year. Or you could decide to hold a new interview process. So my interest is making sure that we have a fully functioning planning commission so that we can continue the good work that they've been doing on the comprehensive plan amendments and code development.
Councilmember Sperry.
Thank you. I would propose that we go ahead and reappoint the members who have indicated they would like to continue to serve, which of course would provide consistency and keep the progress going. And then I also appreciate that we have our January 12th, I guess of a year ago or 2 years ago, minutes here where we have our ordered list. We had a number of good candidates for the Planning Commission, and we had I know we spent a lot of time interviewing them, and so we have 4 alternatives, and they are ranked in order. And so our number 1 alternate that we appointed is David Ross, and the reason I'm calling out his name was he was someone who actually applied 2 different times, and he lives in I think Trail Walk or something like that. So what I would propose is we go ahead and reappoint those who want to continue to serve, and then use our list of alternatives, obviously going down to see who is still interested in serving.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure, Councilmember Smith.
So, because I saw this too, and I saw this order was different from these prior minutes than the order on the agenda item. And so I don't recall, but is from these minutes back in a year ago or whatever the date was that the order of priority that we had then? Because I honestly didn't remember that.
Based on votes, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I don't usually remember everything, but that was...
Yeah, I think the one on the minutes is the correct one.
I don't know if this order was in terms of ranked or this was just the way the names came out. I'd have to sort of rely on your memory on that.
I remember Dennis Olson was fairly high up.
Yeah, it was ranked.
City Clerk, do you know whether the minutes reflect the order as stated? I don't remember exactly either. Nobody seems to have a recollection.
No, I do. Because we voted on them, and then we had, based on the next top vote getter, and as I remember, it was very close.
Right.
And so,
So the minutes are correct in your way of thinking? Because
Yes.
I would agree with you.
Yes, I believe that, because we ranked them in order by the votes, and then we used that to number them as first alternate, second alternate, third alternate.
So then your suggestion is to reappoint the 3 and then to go start with the first one listed in the minutes and see if they can do it, and if they can't, move to second, and so on.
Seems like a logical plan to me.
To me, too. I would agree with that.
Do we need a second for that? Or is that an official motion?
If Councilmember Sperry wants to make that a motion.
So I move that we can reappoint the 3 members, 3 commissioners who've indicated they'd like to serve, and then to fill the vacant position from our alternative list, starting with offering it to number 1 down.
As stated in the minutes.
As stated in the minute.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I think let's just do this for consistency. Clerk, take the roll, please, if there's no further discussion. One second.
I have one comment is, honestly, I don't remember who he is. And I know who I know who 3 of the other 3 are, but I don't know who this is. And so I don't have a problem. I don't have a strong opinion about it. I just, I wish I knew something more. I didn't know that's the order we were going to take this evening. I just figured I would vote for one of the people I knew. Okay. And so.
Councilmember Sperry.
So I don't know this man personally, but I do know that what impressed me about him was, first of all, he applied two separate times. He's a lawyer, and he's fairly new to the community. And I remember the first time we interviewed him that, I thought, oh, that's nice he wants to be involved. But then the second time, I thought, wow, he really wants to be involved. And at that point, I don't remember the specifics of how his career had developed in terms of him being more of leadership and, working with teams and all that. And so that impressed me, that a person who was relatively new to the community wanted to be involved. And so I think that's why it stuck in my mind.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so motion on the table. Any further? So let's just go ahead and do a roll call on this.
Councilmember Sperry.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski.
Yes.
Councilmember Herbig.
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness.
Yes.
Thank you. 7-0.
All right.
Thank you.
Wonderful. That's done. Got to make sure that I don't miss anything here. All right. Staff reports. Kenmore Police Motor Patrol Officer, Mr. Carlinsey. Chief, you're going to ride a bike?
I know it's getting late. We have just two things under staff report. One is the police motorcycle. The other one is something you don't see on your agenda, but it will be a fun 4-minute surprise.
72 slides? Yeah.
Oh, is it really?
Oh, you guys have, you can see I could see that it's 72 slides. I was a little scared.
Is it 72 slides? Okay, so anyway, Chief and I have been talking about police motorcycle. As you know, soon after the Target Zero resolution was adopted, we were able to get the Covington motor officer to come up on occasion, on overtime. He's no longer available, and there's no other police motorcycles available in the sheriff's department. And so we're looking to add one for the city of Kenmore. And it's something that we don't have to commit to for a certain amount of time. I'm recommending that if it does prove to be successful, that we do stay with it for at least a few years. But the police motorcycle, as you can see in the memo, talks about how a motorcycle is much more able to patrol certain spots that police cars can't because of their size and turning radius and everything. So really helps with crosswalk enforcement, especially on 522. And so because of that, we're proposing to add a police motorcycle, and the academy for that starts in April. And in order for the police officer to make the academy, we need to give them notice before year's end. The cost on very conservative worst-case scenario is about $12,000 a year. We just got some numbers from the county today that's looking more like $9,500 a year. Those are more precise numbers than what we had when the memo was written. But with that, we'd like to recommend going forward. I don't need a formal vote on this because I have the authority to do it and it's within budget. But I would like at least your blessing on it before we move forward. And I have asked Chief to stick it out through the end of this evening so he can be available for questions as well.
Any questions? Councilmember Sperry.
He says, so first of all, great creative solution. I love it. How will you determine this is a success? What's your criteria for keeping this going, assuming we move forward with it?
Well, it's going to be a...
Yeah, you're on.
It'll be a part-time 50-50. So during the fall and wintertime, you won't see the motor out there very often, but late spring and summer, you'll see them out there quite a bit. So we're taking the existing vacancy that we have, which is a patrol vacancy, and we're just going to make that a half-time patrol and motor vacancy or motor position. So what we'll do is we'll keep track of his statistics and how effective he is. I know it'll be very effective because the motor officer we had from Covington was able to put the motorcycle up on the sidewalk at the major intersections, just watch and then jump off and go get the violator. So it's going to be a success. It's a win-win for the city because it's very, very low cost. We're not adding an FTE, we're just adding a vehicle, and then we're going to add a person who's going to be qualified to ride that. So we'll monitor it and keep statistics, but I think it's something that even my boss over in Charlotte said he wants to watch it and get some feedback from me because it's something that he might be considering for his city in the future.
Good question, Lori. Thank you. Anything else?
I say go with it.
So, everybody in agreement?
Okay,
To me.
I'll sign a letter tomorrow directing the sheriff's department to start adding that motorcycle and all the preparations to go along with that. And so Teresa McAllister serendipitously happened to be here tonight, and she did a really great slideshow for our staff Christmas party last week. And it was so great and so inspiring that I thought, you know what, the council needs to see this. So she's modified it a little bit. She might have even added a little music to it. Yeah. So because this is the last council meeting of the year, this slideshow looks back on the last 12 months. And I just hope it gives you a warm and fuzzy feeling about all the cool stuff we've done, and more importantly, the great coworkers that we have here at the city. So with that, enjoy the video for 4 minutes. Okay.
You have to plug in the little,
Plugged into the speaker port.
You're good now. You're good. Come on.
did you find, there's a little cord that plugs in.
That little black one going up? That small black one going up?
I would like to have one-on-ones this week, and I think it'll be the last ones of the year.
We could go to down the row for us while she's playing with that.
We could. So let's, you guys, when you get it, we'll stop. Comments, initiatives. Councilmember Smith.
Gosh, I thought I had something to say, but I don't. So thanks. I know you're all relieved.
Councilmember Sperry.
Merry Christmas. And have a good New Year.
Councilmember Curtis.
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Herbig.
So I've spoken with Rob a little bit about this, and I think he's spoken with most of you about this also, but I wanted to check in and make sure there were no major objections to Rob and Patty looking into possibilities of live streaming the council retreat that's coming up in January. You know, we do go an hour and a half away from Kenmore. It makes it pretty prohibitive for folks who are interested in following along to come and see what we're doing. So I just wanted to check and see if there are any major objections. Otherwise, I think Patty and Rob are going to keep looking into the feasibility of live streaming the retreat.
I guess I'm a little be curious what the cost would be and how many people actually watch live streams. We should have some figures on that right now.
I didn't get the figures from them. I asked them for them, but I didn't get anything. It's not very many, though. They did say it's very, very small. The majority of people watch the video after. But the cost is maybe $200. It's really.
And then your staff, does that include your time for the day?
No. But I'm salaried.
Yeah, but that's an extra day for you.
Yeah.
Right? Because you'd have to be there up there for it for the entire time, the 2.5 days.
Yes.
Okay. But if we get those numbers, I'd be very curious as to what they were.
Okay.
Councilmember Curtis.
I guess I don't really see the need for it. I think as long as it's recorded, I like recording it visually if people can do that more than just the sound, if that's easy. But I think the extra cost, the live streaming, I think it's going to add complications that we will be fiddling and diddling with this thing throughout the course of the event is my expectation. And I just don't think enough people will be watching it during that time. I mean, it's a day and a half, and I just don't think enough people would watch it. It would be worth doing it. So I think as long as it's being recorded and they can watch it in their own time, most people don't watch a day and a half event in a row. They'll just watch it during dinner for the next 5 weeks.
If we don't live stream it, they can't watch it. They can only hear it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I can't believe that they will come up and bring all the equipment up and just get it set up and running for $200.
No, he's coming Friday to run through with me, and I will be doing that.
And you're hauling all the equipment up and setting up the cameras and...
Yeah, it's not much equipment.
But I remember in setting this up, we had lots of problems. And then do we know, because I've always had trouble getting internet service there,
Yes, they have.
how that's going to work
Yes, they
for
told.
video streaming?
AV Captural gave me specs, and they tested it. They tested it in the room specifically for us, the LaConner Channel Lodge, and it's way above what, in terms of strength and I forget what the other one is.
And that the internet service free?
Yes. However, he did say they did say at the Channel Lodge, if there's wind, there will be problems.
Wind?
Yeah.
Yeah, power lines.
Yeah, I mean, I still would like to see the numbers.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So,
Councilor Sperry.
how about this idea? So first of all, I guess it's news to me that unless it's live streamed, we don't get the audio video component, the video component. And I think that we have really created that expectation now with the public that they do see, audio and video together. So that makes sense to continue that, even though we're going to be, in a different location. The only other thing I would say is let's make sure we have a backup plan, like an audio, because to me it just feels like there's too many missing parts. So if we can't, for some reason it doesn't work, then, just have our backup standard audio.
Sure. The reason that we can't do it separately is because in order to stream it, we need the same equipment that we need to make it video. It's no different.
Oh, okay.
The streaming is something I set up before the meeting, and it just goes, but everything else is the same as what we do.
And so the streaming then would be saved for perpetuity. I mean, it's not live and then it's gone. It's saved.
The videotaped meeting, yes.
It's like our videos here.
Yeah, I mean, just like this streaming video
that
here.
makes sense.
It would be exactly like this. It's the same company and all that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good to know.
I'm just looking at all the complications we had in getting this thing finally tuned and running, and how we think we're going to go up there if the wind blows. And I'm looking at the expectations, right? Here we start this, and 5 minutes later it goes out.
Then we don't
That's
even
why
have
we
an
need
audio.
the audio backup.
Oh,
Councilman
definitely.
Curtis.
I will say I'd like to change my opinion now that I know you can't record it without the streaming.
You can record the audio.
You can record.
I mean, but you can't record video. I like the video.
Yeah.
So you can't record the video without the streaming. So I think
I just want to know what
I'm
the
sorry.
backup is when the video goes out 10
There's a
minutes in.
misunderstanding there. I don't have to do the streaming, but if I do video, I'm doing everything that I would be doing. If the only difference between doing video without streaming and doing streaming is a click of the button before the meeting starts.
No big deal.
And pray with your fingers crossed that no wind blows.
How's it going here?
Councilmember Herbig, are we ready? Councilmember Herbig, go ahead.
Okay. I just want to say, I know I've realized after going through this a couple times that our retreats are particularly important where we do set the agenda for the whole year. We do kind of set staff expectations for what we want to work on for the whole year. And we do it at a place that's relatively inconvenient for our constituents. And and we have set kind of the expectation that they're able to watch our meetings. So I think, especially when we're doing the meeting an hour and a half away from everybody's home, that we should take what steps we can to make it a little bit more accessible. Because otherwise it does feel a little wrong for us to go so far away, not give any way for anybody to call in or follow along or something. It just doesn't quite feel right. So,
do we need a motion, or we're just discussed it now? And
well,
we're good to go?
yeah, fine. I'd like to move that we continue looking into feasibility and live streaming the meeting if possible.
I'll second that.
All right, move in second to look into the video streaming of this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Nay.
Just so it's not
The aye.
unanimous.
Yeah, the aye got me there.
So
All
with,
right.
with the understanding that if it is feasible, we're doing it.
With the understanding that if it is feasible, we're doing it.
And that we have an audio backup if it doesn't work.
Exactly. Right. Right. And so, yeah, if we can get, I still would like to see the numbers, and I would still like to see what all the other cities are doing. All right. Let's go with you guys. You've been waiting here.
Okay, Teresa, let her roll. It'll be without music.
Without music. Okay, fine.
You want me to sing?
No.
I'm not sure.
Dashing through the snow.
Get there. Oh, there's our Peter Caggiano guy. Now, what is this? Just a bit building?
Staff working.
Just people out working. Got it. Nice.
Sure.
Oh, the volunteer team. This was the charrette thing, huh? Note to self, huh? That's awesome. Awesome. Yay. That must be the permit thing.
All right. Good job. Good job, Teresa. Thank you very much. And I thought it was great to end on that. What are you grateful for? And I'm definitely grateful to be working here and for a wonderful year we all had together, and hopefully an even better one next year if we can top that. So, Merry Christmas to you all, and have a great holiday. Thank you.
All right. Councilor Danuski.
Nothing, Dad.
Deputy Mayor.
Merry Christmas to everybody. See you next year. Thank you.
So just a couple of real short things. I've met with Representative Farrell and Senator Frocht on Kenmore's legislative agenda and some different issues. And we're meeting with the Representative Paulette on the 21st. I've had multiple meetings with legislators throughout King County and talking about some aging and disability stuff that I'm on one of the committees as the vice chair for. And I always manage to get in a parting shot about not to forget Kenmore and whatever, so that they will always, whenever we come up for something, they're going to remember us. So anyway, that's all I have. Merry Christmas to everybody, and hope you have a happy New Year's, and we are adjourned. Huh?